Deep within the segmentum solar, where the light of holy Terra still burns bright across the void, lies the industrial powerhouse known as Necromunda. This hive world stands as one of the Imperium's most vital manufacturing centers, its massive urban structures piercing the polluted atmosphere like metallic mountains of human ambition and desperation. The planet's designation as a crucial supplier to the Imperial war machine places it under the direct oversight of the administratum's most senior officials, ensuring that its production quotas remain consistently met despite the countless challenges that plague its sprawling population. The strategic importance of Necromunda cannot be overstated within the broader context of Imperial logistics. Positioned along major shipping lanes that connect the core worlds of the segmentum solar to the outer reaches of Imperial space, the planet serves as both a manufacturing hub and a critical way station for military supplies. The Adeptus Munitorum maintains extensive facilities across the world's primary hive cities, coordinating the distribution of weapons, ammunition, and industrial components to Imperial Guard regiments, Space Marine chapters, and planetary defense forces throughout the galaxy. This logistical network has operated continuously for millennia, with vast cargo haulers and transport ships arriving and departing from Necromunda's orbital docking facilities in an endless cycle of supply and demand. The planet's surface presents a stark testament to humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction. Towering hive cities dominate the landscape, their upper spires reaching toward the stars, while their foundations burrow deep into the planet's crust. These massive urban agglomerations house billions of Imperial citizens, from the wealthy merchant houses that control the flow of trade to the countless workers who toil in the industrial sectors that never cease their production. The architecture of these hives reflects millennia of continuous construction, with newer sections built atop older foundations in a vertical expansion that has created cities of impossible scale and complexity. Hive Primus stands as the crown jewel of Necromunda's urban development, serving as both the planetary capital and the seat of Imperial governance. This colossal structure houses the offices of the planetary governor, the Adeptus Arbites precinct fortresses, and the primary coordination centers for the planet's industrial output. The hive's upper levels gleam with polished metal and reinforced glass, providing luxurious accommodations for the noble houses and wealthy merchants who control Necromunda's economy. These spire nobles live in splendor that rivals the courts of many sector capitals, their palatial residences equipped with atmospheric processors that provide clean air and filtered water, luxuries unknown to the billions who dwell in the hive's lower reaches. The middle sections of Hive Primus contain the primary manufacturing districts, where vast assembly lines produce the weapons and equipment that fuel the Imperial war machine. Massive factorums stretch for kilometers, their production floors filled with the constant din of machinery and the acrid smell of industrial chemicals. Workers labor in 12-hour shifts, their lives regulated by the demands of production quotas and the harsh discipline of foremen who answer directly to the guild representatives. These manufacturing zones operate under strict security protocols, with Adeptus Mechanicus tech priests overseeing the maintenance of crucial machinery and ensuring that the sacred rituals of production are properly observed. Beyond Hive Primus, several other major population centers dot Necromunda's surface, each specializing in different aspects of the planet's industrial output. Hive Secundus once rivaled Primus in size and importance until a catastrophic industrial accident rendered large sections of the structure uninhabitable. The disaster, which occurred during the 39th millennium, involved a massive coolant leak in the hive's primary reactor systems, creating a toxic cloud that forced the evacuation of entire city blocks. Today, Hive Secundus serves as a grim reminder of the dangers inherent in Necromunda's industrial processes, its abandoned sectors now home to mutants, scavengers, and worse creatures that thrive in the poisoned environment. The underhive regions of these massive structures represent a different world entirely from the gleaming spires above. Here, in the depths where Imperial law holds little sway, countless gangs, wage constant warfare for control of territory, resources, and salvage rights. The Goliath gangs, enhanced by crude chemical stimulants and cybernetic implants, battle against the swift and deadly Escher fighters, while the tech-obsessed Van Saar gangs deploy advanced weaponry salvaged from ancient standard template constructs. These conflicts rage through the maze like passages and abandoned industrial zones that honeycomb the lower levels of every hive, creating a perpetual state of low-level warfare that the authorities above generally choose to ignore as long as it doesn't interfere with production schedules. The environment outside Necromunda's protective hive structures presents a hellscape of industrial pollution and environmental devastation. The ash wastes stretch for thousands of kilometers, covering the planet's surface in a gray blanket of toxic debris that shifts and swirls with every chemical wind. These desolate expanses contain the accumulated waste of millennia of industrial production, creating a landscape where nothing natural can survive for long. The ground itself has been transformed by centuries of chemical contamination, with some areas so saturated with industrial toxins that they glow with an eerie phosphorescence during the planet's brief periods of darkness. Chemical storms regularly sweep across these wastelands, carrying clouds of corrosive vapor that can strip flesh from bone and dissolve metal components in minutes. These weather phenomena result from the complex interaction of industrial emissions with Necromunda's atmospheric conditions, creating cyclonic systems that can persist for weeks or even months. The storms follow somewhat predictable patterns, allowing the hive cities to seal their external vents and activate their atmospheric shields when necessary. But any unfortunate enough to be caught in the open during such events face almost certain death. Scattered throughout the ash wastes lie the ruins of ancient settlements, remnants of Necromunda's pre-industrial past when the planet supported a more diverse ecosystem. These archaeological sites contain fragments of standard template construct technology, ancient data cores, and occasionally more exotic artifacts that attract scavenger expeditions from the hives. However, these ruins have become infested with mutant creatures that have adapted to the toxic environment, creating deadly ecosystems where radiation-resistant predators hunt among the corroded remains of humanity's earlier achievements. The most dangerous of these creatures are the giant ash waste spiders, whose chitinous exoskeletons have evolved to process the toxic chemicals in their environment, making them nearly immune to conventional weapons. The planet's industrial capacity centers on the production of military equipment for the Imperial Guard and other Imperial forces. Massive munitions factories operate around the clock, producing everything from standard-issue lasguns to heavy artillery pieces capable of leveling fortress walls. The quality of Necromunda's weapons has earned recognition throughout the segmentum solar, with many regiments specifically requesting equipment manufactured on the hive world. The planet's armorsmiths have perfected techniques for producing flak armor that provides superior protection while remaining lightweight enough for extended combat operations, while the weapons manufactorums turn out millions of power cells, ammunition clips, and replacement parts that keep the Imperial war machine functioning across countless battlefields. Chemical production represents another crucial aspect of Necromunda's industrial output. The planet's refineries process raw materials extracted from asteroid mining operations and imported bulk chemicals into specialized compounds used in everything from spacecraft fuel to the exotic substances required for space marine equipment maintenance. These facilities operate under the strictest security protocols, as many of the chemicals involved are highly volatile or possess strategic military applications. The Adeptus Mechanicus maintains permanent oversight of these operations, ensuring that the proper rituals are observed and that no heretical innovations contaminate the sacred processes of production. The mining operations that support Necromunda's industrial base extend far beyond the planet's surface, reaching into the asteroid belts and smaller worlds within the system. Vast mining ships equipped with industrial-grade extraction equipment harvest raw materials from these sources, returning to Necromunda's orbital facilities with holds full of metals, rare earth elements, and other materials essential to the manufacturing process. These operations require constant protection from pirates, Xenos raiders, and other threats that plague the shipping lanes, leading to the deployment of significant naval assets to secure the supply routes that keep Necromunda's factories operational. The social structure of Necromunda reflects the rigid hierarchies that characterize imperial society, but with additional layers of complexity created by the planet's industrial focus. The noble houses that control major manufacturing concerns wield power that extends far beyond planetary boundaries, with their trade networks and political connections reaching into the highest levels of sector government. These merchant dynasties have accumulated wealth and influence over millennia, establishing themselves as indispensable partners to the imperial bureaucracy through their ability to deliver crucial supplies when and where they are needed most. The absolute authority over Necromunda rests firmly in the hands of House Helmoer, the ancient noble dynasty that has maintained its stranglehold on planetary governance for over 3 millennia. Lord Gerontius Helmoer, the current patriarch of this illustrious house, rules from the apex of Hive Primus with the absolute power granted to him by imperial charter as planetary governor. His authority extends far beyond mere administrative oversight, encompassing complete control over Necromunda's vast industrial output, trade relationships, and the complex web of inter-house politics that defines the planet's social structure. The Helmoer family compound occupies the highest levels of the spire, where crystalline domes provide panoramic views of the hive city below, while sophisticated atmospheric processors ensure that the air remains pure and breathable, a stark contrast to the toxic environment that pervades the lower levels. House Helmoer's monopolistic control over Necromunda's political and economic systems operates through a carefully constructed network of exclusive contracts, hereditary privileges, and strategic alliances that have been refined over generations. The house maintains direct ownership of the most profitable manufacturing concerns, including the primary weapons foundries that produce the renowned Necromunda pattern lasguns and the chemical refineries that process exotic compounds for off-world export. Their control extends to the orbital docking facilities, where massive cargo haulers arrive daily to collect finished goods and deliver raw materials, with every transaction generating substantial revenues that flow directly into the Helmoer treasury. The family's wealth has grown to astronomical proportions, allowing them to maintain private armies, fund extensive intelligence networks, and purchase political influence that reaches into the highest echelons of sector government. The current Lord Helmoer rules through a combination of calculated brutality and shrewd political maneuvering that has kept potential rivals off balance for decades. His palace guard consists of elite warriors equipped with master-crafted weapons and powered armor that rivals the equipment used by Imperial Guard stormtrooper units. These guards undergo extensive conditioning and loyalty programming to ensure their absolute devotion to the Helmoer dynasty, creating a protective barrier around the ruling family that has proven impenetrable to assassination attempts and political coups. The Lord's personal chambers contain advanced life support systems and rejuvenate treatments that have extended his lifespan far beyond normal human parameters, allowing him to accumulate centuries of experience in the art of planetary governance and political manipulation. Beneath House Helmoer in the complex hierarchy of Necromunda's power structure stand the 6 major clan houses, each controlling significant industrial assets and commanding the loyalty of millions of workers, gang fighters, and lesser nobles. These houses have evolved distinct cultural identities and specialized industrial focuses that reflect both their historical development and their adaptation to specific niches within Necromunda's economy. The constant competition between these houses drives much of the planet's political intrigue and provides the underlying tension that occasionally erupts into open warfare in the underhive territories, where their influence overlaps and conflicts. House Orlok has established itself as the dominant force in Necromunda's mining operations, controlling vast networks of extraction facilities that burrow deep into the planet's crust and extend throughout the asteroid belts of the local system. Their miners work in conditions that would kill unprotected humans within minutes, using advanced environmental suits and cybernetic enhancements that allow them to operate in the toxic depths, where valuable minerals and rare earth elements can be harvested. The Orlok leadership maintains a corporate structure that emphasizes efficiency and profit margins, with mining supervisors who answer directly to board members residing in the middle spire levels of Hive Primus. Their industrial facilities process raw materials into refined metals and exotic alloys that form the backbone of Necromunda's manufacturing capacity, making them indispensable partners to the other major houses despite the fierce competition that characterizes inter-house relationships. The cultural identity of House Orlok revolves around concepts of hard work, technical expertise, and loyalty to the mining brotherhood that transcends individual family loyalties. Their workers develop a distinctive appearance marked by industrial tattoos that indicate specialization levels, cybernetic implants that enhance their ability to work in hazardous environments, and the pale complexion that results from spending most of their lives in artificial lighting. Orlok gang fighters carry mining equipment that has been modified for combat use, including industrial cutting lasers, explosive charges designed for tunnel clearing, and powered tools that can crush bone and tear through metal with equal efficiency. Their fighting style emphasizes teamwork and tactical coordination, reflecting the collaborative approach required for successful mining operations in Necromunda's dangerous underground environments. House Goliath represents the pinnacle of Necromunda's chemical and pharmaceutical industries, operating massive processing facilities that produce everything from basic industrial solvents to exotic combat stimulants used by Imperial Guard shock troops. Their laboratories employ thousands of chemists, bioengineers, and test subjects who work to develop new compounds that can enhance human performance, resist environmental toxins, or create more effective weapons of war. The Goliath leadership has embraced a philosophy of physical enhancement that permeates every aspect of their house culture, leading to the widespread use of growth hormones, muscle-building chemicals, and cybernetic augmentations that transform their members into towering giants of enhanced muscle and bone density. The manufacturing facilities controlled by House Goliath operate under conditions that would be considered extremely hazardous by Imperial safety standards, with workers exposed to chemical vapors, radioactive materials, and experimental compounds that frequently cause mutations or other biological changes. The House leadership views these risks as acceptable costs for maintaining their competitive advantage in the chemical industry, and they have developed sophisticated medical facilities to treat workers who suffer adverse reactions to their industrial processes. Goliath gang members undergo deliberate chemical enhancement programs that increase their physical strength and pain tolerance, while often causing psychological changes that make them more aggressive and less capable of complex reasoning. Their appearance reflects these modifications, with massively muscled physiques, scarred skin from chemical burns, and crude cybernetic implants that supplement their enhanced biology. House Escher has carved out a dominant position in Necromunda's pharmaceutical and biochemical sectors, specializing in the production of medical supplies, combat drugs, and exotic compounds used in advanced manufacturing processes. Their laboratories maintain the highest standards of cleanliness and precision on the planet, employing sophisticated equipment and rigorous quality control procedures that ensure their products meet the exacting requirements of imperial military and medical organizations. The House leadership consists entirely of women, following ancient traditions that exclude male participation in their most sensitive research and development programs. This matriarchal structure has created a unique culture that emphasizes scientific excellence, aesthetic refinement, and deadly precision in all aspects of their operations. The Escher industrial complexes produce a wide range of specialized chemicals, including the combat stimulants used by Imperial Guard units, the medical supplies required for battlefield surgery, and the exotic compounds needed for advanced manufacturing processes throughout the sector. Their research facilities conduct experiments that push the boundaries of Imperial biotechnology, developing new treatments for radiation exposure, chemical poisoning, and the various diseases that plague hive world populations. Escher gang fighters undergo extensive training in the use of chemical weapons, poison delivery systems, and biowarfare techniques that make them among the most feared combatants in the underhive. Their slender builds and enhanced reflexes allow them to move with cat-like grace through the maze like passages of the lower hive levels, while their knowledge of toxins and pharmaceuticals gives them access to weapons that can kill or incapacitate enemies without leaving obvious traces. House Van Saar maintains its position as Necromunda's premier technology house through their control of ancient standard template construct fragments and their expertise in advanced manufacturing techniques. Their workshops produce sophisticated equipment that incorporates technology from the dark age of technology, creating weapons and devices that surpass the capabilities of standard Imperial equipment. The House leadership consists of tech savants who have spent decades studying the sacred mysteries of ancient technology, working closely with Adeptus Mechanicus representatives to ensure that their innovations remain within acceptable doctrinal boundaries. Their manufacturing facilities employ the most advanced production techniques available on Necromunda, using precision machinery and quality control systems that produce equipment of exceptional reliability and effectiveness. The Van Saar cultural identity revolves around the pursuit of technological excellence and the preservation of ancient knowledge that might otherwise be lost to the galaxy. Their members undergo extensive technical training that begins in childhood, learning to operate and maintain equipment that most Imperial citizens would consider impossibly complex. Van Saar gang fighters carry weapons that incorporate advanced targeting systems, enhanced power sources, and sophisticated ammunition types that give them significant advantages in combat situations. Their distinctive appearance includes form-fitting bodysuits that provide environmental protection and enhanced mobility, along with advanced optical equipment that allows them to operate effectively in the low light conditions common throughout the underhive. The House maintains strict quality control over their technology, ensuring that their most advanced equipment never falls into the hands of potential enemies or rivals. House Caudor has established itself as a major force in Necromunda's recycling and waste processing industries, operating vast facilities that break down the enormous quantities of industrial waste generated by the planet's manufacturing processes. Their workers labor in conditions that expose them to toxic chemicals, radioactive materials, and biological hazards that would quickly kill unprotected humans, but they have developed specialized equipment and protective procedures that allow them to extract valuable materials from even the most contaminated waste streams. The House leadership has embraced a fanatical devotion to the Imperial cult that influences every aspect of their operations, viewing their work as a sacred duty to purify the corruption that threatens human civilization. The Caudor industrial philosophy emphasizes redemption through hard work, purification through suffering, and the transformation of waste into useful materials as a metaphor for the spiritual transformation of humanity. Their facilities process everything from discarded metal components to biological waste from the hive's population centers, using chemical treatments and mechanical processes to extract materials that can be recycled into new products. Caudor gang fighters carry weapons that have been assembled from salvaged components and blessed through religious ceremonies, creating crude but effective armaments that reflect their house's philosophy of making the best use of available resources. Their appearance typically includes religious iconography, ritual scarification, and protective equipment that has been modified with sacred symbols and blessed by house chaplains. House Delac operates in the shadows of Necromunda's economy, controlling information networks, surveillance systems, and intelligence-gathering operations that provide them with influence far beyond their apparent industrial capacity. Their legitimate business interests include data processing facilities, communication networks, and security services that serve the other major houses and the planetary government. However, their true power derives from their extensive spy networks, blackmail operations, and their ability to manipulate information flows throughout the hive cities. The Delac leadership maintains a deliberately obscure profile, with House members trained in stealth techniques, electronic warfare, and psychological manipulation that allows them to operate effectively in the complex political environment of the Spire nobility. The industrial facilities controlled by House Goliath specialize in the production of surveillance equipment, communication devices, and electronic warfare systems that are essential to modern Imperial military operations. Their workshops employ skilled technicians who can modify standard Imperial equipment to include advanced features like encrypted communication channels, enhanced sensor arrays, and sophisticated targeting systems. Goliath gang fighters excel in stealth operations, reconnaissance missions, and the kind of subtle warfare that leaves no obvious traces of their involvement. Their appearance reflects their secretive nature, with dark clothing, advanced optical equipment, and weapons designed for silent operation that allow them to eliminate targets without alerting nearby enemies to their presence. The complex web of alliances, rivalries, and blood feuds that define inter-house politics creates a constantly shifting landscape of cooperation and conflict that drives much of Necromunda's political development. These relationships have been shaped by centuries of competition for resources, territorial disputes, and personal vendettas that have been passed down through generations of house leadership. The current political situation reflects a delicate balance of power that could be disrupted by any significant change in the relative strength or influence of the major houses, leading to periods of intense negotiation, subtle sabotage, and occasional open warfare that tests the limits of House Helmor's ability to maintain planetary stability. The Spire nobility's decadent lifestyle represents the ultimate expression of wealth and power on Necromunda, with the upper levels of Hive Primus transformed into a paradise of luxury that rivals the most extravagant Imperial worlds. The noble houses maintain vast residential complexes equipped with artificial gravity systems, climate control that provides perfect atmospheric conditions, and entertainment facilities that include everything from gladiatorial arenas to exotic gardens filled with off-world flora. Their daily routines involve elaborate social ceremonies, competitive displays of wealth, and political maneuvering that determines the distribution of power and resources throughout the planetary hierarchy. The contrast between their pampered existence and the brutal conditions endured by the underhive population creates a stark illustration of the extreme inequality that characterizes Imperial society, while their ruthless exploitation of the industrial workforce ensures that their privileged position remains secure despite the constant threats that emerge from the depths of the hive cities. Beneath the gleaming spires and industrial complexes that define Necromunda's upper levels lies a vast network of forgotten spaces, abandoned structures, and makeshift settlements that form the underhive. This sprawling subterranean realm extends for hundreds of levels below the main hive structure, encompassing millions of cubic kilometers of interconnected chambers, collapsed tunnels, and jury-rigged habitation zones that house the dregs of Imperial society. The underhive represents the accumulated detritus of millennia of continuous construction, where each generation of builders has simply constructed new foundations atop the ruins of what came before, creating a vertical archaeological record of human habitation that stretches deep into Necromunda's crust. The physical structure of the underhive defies any coherent architectural planning, having evolved organically through countless cycles of construction, abandonment, and reclamation. Ancient manufacturing districts that once produced goods for long-forgotten Imperial campaigns now serve as fortified gang territories, their massive assembly halls converted into weapon workshops and training facilities. Residential blocks that housed millions of workers during previous industrial booms have been subdivided into cramped tenements where entire families occupy single rooms, sharing communal facilities that barely function after decades of neglect and improvised repairs. Transportation networks designed to move goods and personnel efficiently through the hive structure have become labyrinthine passages where ambush predators lurk in the shadows, waiting for unwary travelers who venture too far from established safe routes. The deeper levels of the underhive contain structures so ancient that their original purpose has been lost to time, with some archaeosurveyors speculating that certain sections predate Imperial colonization by several millennia. These archaeological layers contain technology and architectural styles that differ significantly from standard imperial construction techniques, suggesting that Necromunda's human population may have survived through the Age of Strife in isolated pockets before being brought back into imperial compliance. The walls of these ancient chambers bear inscriptions in languages that no living scholar can decipher, while their construction incorporates materials and techniques that modern imperial engineering cannot replicate. Such discoveries attract teams of tech adepts and rogue archaeologists who risk the dangers of the deep underhive in search of standard template construct fragments and other technological artifacts that could revolutionize imperial manufacturing capabilities. Gang warfare serves as the primary mechanism for establishing territorial control throughout the underhive, with dozens of organized criminal groups competing for dominance over the most valuable locations and resource flows. These conflicts operate according to unwritten rules that have evolved over generations of violence, creating a complex system of territorial boundaries, tribute relationships, and temporary alliances that shift constantly based on the changing fortunes of individual gangs. The most successful gang leaders combine tactical acumen with political cunning, forging networks of allies and subordinates that can mobilize hundreds of fighters when territorial disputes escalate into open warfare. These leaders often rise from the ranks of experienced fighters who have survived years of combat in the underhive's treacherous environment, developing the skills and reputation necessary to command respect from both their followers and their enemies. The Goliath gangs that operate in the underhive represent the most physically imposing fighters in this violent ecosystem, their members enhanced by crude chemical treatments and cybernetic implants that transform them into towering brutes capable of incredible feats of strength and endurance. These fighters typically stand over 2 meters tall, with massively muscled physiques that strain the limits of their improvised armor and clothing. Their weapons of choice include heavy stubbers, combat shotguns, and massive close combat weapons like chain axes and power hammers that can crush skulls and shatter bones with devastating efficiency. Goliath territories are usually located in the industrial zones of the underhive, where they control access to chemical processing facilities and manufacturing equipment that produces the combat stimulants and enhancement drugs that fuel their fighting capabilities. Escher gangs present a stark contrast to their Goliath rivals, fielding fighters whose enhanced reflexes and chemical-enhanced metabolism allow them to move with deadly grace through the maze like passages of the underhive. These all-female gangs specialize in hit and run tactics, using their superior speed and agility to strike at enemy positions before melting away into the shadows. Escher fighters typically carry lightweight weapons like needle rifles, plasma pistols, and monomolecular blades that can slice through armor and flesh with surgical precision. Their territories often center around pharmaceutical laboratories and chemical storage facilities, where they produce the exotic toxins and combat drugs that give them their tactical advantages. The Escher gang hierarchy operates as a strict matriarchy, with experienced fighters serving as mentors to younger members who must prove themselves through increasingly dangerous missions before earning full acceptance into the gang structure. Van Saar gangs leverage their access to advanced technology to dominate the underhive's most strategically important locations, using sophisticated weapons and equipment that far exceed the capabilities of their rivals. These fighters carry Law's weapons with enhanced power sources and targeting systems, along with specialized ammunition that can penetrate even the heaviest improvised armor used by other gangs. Their distinctive environmental suits provide protection against the toxic atmosphere that pervades much of the underhive, while integrated communication systems allow them to coordinate complex tactical maneuvers across multiple combat zones simultaneously. Van Saar territories typically include ancient technology caches and abandoned research facilities, where gang members work to reverse engineer recovered artifacts and maintain their technological edge over competing groups. Orlok gangs draw their strength from their control over the mining tunnels and industrial facilities that honeycomb the underhive's lower levels, using their intimate knowledge of these underground networks to outmaneuver enemies and establish impregnable defensive positions. These fighters carry mining equipment that has been modified for combat use, including industrial cutting lasers, explosive charges, and powered tools that can breach fortified positions or collapse tunnel systems to trap pursuing enemies. Their gang structure mirrors the corporate hierarchy of House Orlok's legitimate mining operations, with experienced supervisors directing teams of fighters in coordinated assaults against rival territories. Orlok gangs often control access to valuable mineral deposits and salvage sites, generating the resources necessary to purchase weapons and equipment from black market dealers who operate throughout the underhive. Cawdor gangs represent the most fanatically religious fighters in the underhive, their members driven by apocalyptic visions and messianic fervor that makes them willing to sacrifice their lives for their cause. These gangs recruit heavily from the underhive's most desperate populations, offering food, shelter, and purpose to individuals who have been abandoned by Imperial society. Cawdor fighters carry weapons assembled from salvaged components and blessed through elaborate religious ceremonies, creating crude but effective armaments that reflect their philosophy of redemption through violence. Their territories often include waste processing facilities and recycling centers, where they extract valuable materials from the detritus of hive society while preaching their message of purification through suffering to anyone willing to listen. Delac gangs operate in the shadows of underhive society, using stealth tactics and information warfare to eliminate enemies without direct confrontation. These fighters specialize in reconnaissance, sabotage, and assassination missions that require patience and subtlety rather than brute force. Their weapons include silenced firearms, monomolecular wire, and exotic toxins that can kill targets without leaving obvious evidence of foul play. Delac territories are often difficult to identify, as the gang maintains multiple safe houses and hidden facilities throughout the underhive, rather than establishing obvious strongholds that could be targeted by rival groups. Their intelligence networks extend throughout the underhive community, providing them with advance warning of enemy movements and opportunities to exploit the weaknesses of competing gangs. The population of the underhive consists primarily of individuals who have fallen from grace in Imperial society, including criminals fleeing justice, workers displaced by industrial accidents, and political dissidents who have earned the displeasure of the authorities. These outcasts form a diverse community that includes everything from former hive nobles who lost their fortunes in political purges to common laborers who suffered injuries that made them unable to continue their work in the upper levels. Many underhive residents bear the physical and psychological scars of their fall from respectability, with missing limbs, chemical burns, and radiation sickness serving as constant reminders of the harsh realities of life in Imperial society. Mutants represent a significant portion of the underhive population, their genetic abnormalities making them unwelcome in the upper levels, where Imperial orthodoxy demands genetic purity. These individuals suffer from a wide range of mutations caused by exposure to industrial chemicals, radioactive materials, and the exotic energies that permeate Necromunda's manufacturing processes. Some mutations are relatively minor, such as unusual skin pigmentation or additional digits, while others are more severe, including extra limbs, enlarged organs, or sensory modifications that allow individuals to perceive electromagnetic radiation or chemical concentrations. The most severely mutated individuals often band together in communities that provide mutual support and protection against the discrimination they face from baseline humans. Refugees from various Imperial conflicts have also found their way to Necromunda's underhive, including survivors of planetary invasions, former Imperial Guard soldiers who deserted their units, and civilians who fled worlds consumed by war. These individuals bring diverse skills and experiences to the underhive community, but they also carry the psychological trauma of their experiences and the constant fear of discovery by Imperial authorities who might consider them deserters or traitors. Many refugees attempt to blend into the general underhive population by adopting new identities and avoiding contact with anyone who might recognize them from their previous lives. The underhive ecosystem has evolved unique characteristics that distinguish it from the environments found in the upper levels of the hive cities. The absence of natural sunlight has led to the development of bioluminescent organisms that provide the primary source of illumination in many areas, creating an eerie twilight atmosphere where strange fungi and bacterial colonies glow with phosphorescent light. These organisms have adapted to feed on the chemical pollutants that saturate the underhive atmosphere, processing toxic compounds into less harmful byproducts while generating the energy needed for their metabolic processes. Some of these organisms have grown to enormous sizes, with fungal colonies that span entire chambers and bacterial mats that cover the walls and ceilings of abandoned tunnels. The underhive's fauna includes a variety of creatures that have adapted to the toxic environment through rapid evolution and genetic modification. Giant rats the size of small dogs scavenge through the waste dumps and abandoned settlements, their digestive systems capable of processing organic matter that would poison normal animals. These creatures often serve as both food sources and pest problems for underhive communities, with some gangs training them as attack animals, while others hunt them for their meat and fur. Tunnel snakes that can grow to lengths of several meters lurk in the drainage systems and ventilation shafts, their venom adapted to incapacitate prey that might otherwise be too large for them to consume. More dangerous predators include the ash waste spiders that have colonized the deeper levels of the underhive, their chitinous exoskeletons providing protection against the corrosive chemicals that would dissolve the flesh of normal creatures. These arachnids can grow to the size of ground vehicles, with leg spans that exceed 3 meters and mandibles capable of crushing human bones. Their webs incorporate metallic fibers scavenged from industrial waste, creating traps that can snare unwary travelers and hold them until the spider arrives to feed. The most dangerous specimens have developed primitive intelligence, learning to recognize the movement patterns of human prey and adjusting their hunting strategies accordingly. Archaeotech represents one of the most valuable resources that can be recovered from the underhive's ancient levels, with salvage teams risking their lives to explore the deepest and most dangerous areas in search of standard template construct fragments and other technological artifacts. These expeditions require careful planning and substantial resources, as the teams must navigate through hostile gang territories, avoid dangerous fauna, and overcome the environmental hazards that protect the most valuable archaeological sites. Successful salvage operations can yield technology worth millions of thrown gelt on the black market, making them attractive to both legitimate archaeological teams and criminal organizations willing to eliminate their competition through violence. The most common archaeotech discoveries include data storage devices that contain manufacturing specifications for equipment that exceeds current Imperial capabilities, power sources that operate on principles that modern tech adepts cannot fully understand, and weapon components that can be integrated into existing systems to dramatically improve their performance. Some of the most valuable finds are complete standard template construct units that can produce finished goods from raw materials, though these devices are extremely rare and often require extensive restoration work before they can be activated safely. The presence of such technology in the underhive has attracted the attention of various Imperial organizations, including the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Inquisition, and rogue trader houses that maintain their own archaeological teams. The toxic environment of the underhive creates numerous health hazards for its inhabitants, with atmospheric contamination levels that would be lethal to unprotected humans within hours of exposure. The air contains a mixture of industrial chemicals, radioactive particles, and biological toxins that cause respiratory problems, skin lesions, and genetic mutations in individuals who lack proper protective equipment. Many underhive residents develop immunity to specific toxins through gradual exposure, but this adaptation often comes at the cost of other health problems, including shortened lifespans, increased cancer rates, and neurological disorders that affect cognitive function and emotional stability. Water sources in the underhive are typically contaminated with heavy metals, industrial solvents, and biological pathogens that make them unsafe for consumption without extensive filtration and chemical treatment. Many communities have developed improvised purification systems using salvaged equipment and locally available materials, but these systems are often inadequate to remove all contaminants and may introduce additional health risks through improper maintenance or operation. Access to clean water represents a significant source of conflict between different underhive communities, with control over functional purification systems often determining the survival prospects of entire settlements. Food production in the underhive relies heavily on recycled organic matter, hydroponic systems that use contaminated water sources, and the cultivation of organisms that can survive in the toxic environment. Many communities raise protein-rich insects and fungal cultures that can process organic waste into edible biomass, though the nutritional quality of these food sources is often inadequate to support healthy human development. Malnutrition is endemic throughout the underhive population, contributing to high infant mortality rates, stunted growth, and increased susceptibility to disease and injury. The fundamental structure of underhive society revolves around the absolute necessity of territorial control, as access to vital resources determines the difference between survival and extinction for the countless gangs that populate Necromunda's depths. Territory represents far more than simple geographic boundaries in this hostile environment. It encompasses control over trade routes that connect different levels of the hive, access to resource deposits that provide raw materials for weapons and equipment, and strategic positions that allow gangs to monitor and influence the movement of rival groups through their domains. The most valuable territories include choke points where multiple tunnel systems converge, elevated positions that provide tactical advantages during firefights, and areas with functional infrastructure that can support larger populations of fighters and dependents. Trade routes through the underhive follow ancient pathways that were originally designed to transport goods between different industrial sectors, but these corridors have become the arteries through which black market commerce flows between gang territories. Control over these routes allows gangs to levy taxes on merchants and smugglers who must pass through their domains, generating steady income streams that can fund weapons purchases and territorial expansion. The most lucrative routes connect the underhive to the middle levels of the hive structure, where legitimate businesses occasionally require materials or services that can only be obtained through criminal channels. Gangs that control access to these vertical connections can charge premium rates for their services, but they also face increased scrutiny from embodies patrols and corporate security forces that monitor traffic between the different hive levels. Resource deposits scattered throughout the underhive provide the raw materials necessary for manufacturing weapons, ammunition, and equipment that gangs require for their survival. These deposits include scrap metal that can be forged into crude but effective weapons, chemical compounds that can be processed into explosives or combat stimulants, and rare earth elements that are essential for maintaining advanced technology. The location of these deposits often reflects the industrial history of specific underhive areas, with former manufacturing zones containing stockpiles of raw materials that were abandoned when production shifted to other facilities. Competition for access to these resources drives much of the territorial warfare that characterizes underhive society, as gangs must constantly defend their claims against rivals who seek to expand their own resource bases. Strategic positions within the underhive include fortified structures that can serve as gang headquarters, elevated platforms that provide commanding views of surrounding territory, and concealed locations that offer protection from enemy surveillance. The most desirable positions combine defensive advantages with access to multiple escape routes, allowing gangs to withdraw from untenable situations while maintaining the ability to launch surprise attacks against unwary enemies. Ancient industrial facilities often provide ideal gang strongholds, as their reinforced construction can withstand heavy weapons fire, while their complex internal layouts create maze-like environments that favor defenders who know the terrain. Water purification systems, power generation facilities, and atmospheric processors represent particularly valuable strategic assets, as control over these installations allows gangs to provide essential services to their territories while denying them to rival groups. Gang warfare serves as the primary mechanism for resolving disputes over salvage rights, which represent one of the most contentious issues in underhive society due to the enormous value of recoverable technology and materials. Salvage operations typically involve dangerous expeditions into the deepest and most hazardous areas of the underhive, where ancient industrial accidents, toxic contamination, and hostile fauna create extreme risks for exploration teams. The potential rewards justify these dangers, as successful salvage missions can recover archaeotech components worth millions of thrown gelt, weapons that far exceed the capabilities of standard underhive armaments, and industrial equipment that can provide significant advantages to gangs that control manufacturing capabilities. Disputes over salvage rights often escalate into prolonged conflicts that can involve multiple gangs, as the discovery of valuable archaeological sites attracts competing claims from groups that believe they have legitimate interests in the recovered materials. Protection rackets represent another major source of conflict between underhive gangs, as these operations provide steady income streams while requiring minimal initial investment beyond the capacity for violence. Gangs establish protection rackets by identifying vulnerable communities or businesses within their territories and offering security services in exchange for regular payments. These arrangements can be mutually beneficial when gangs actually provide effective protection against raiders and predators, but they often devolve into simple extortion schemes where communities are forced to pay tribute to avoid harassment from the gangs themselves. Competition between gangs for control over lucrative protection territories frequently leads to violent confrontations, as established groups seek to defend their income sources against rivals who attempt to muscle in on their operations. The economics of protection rackets depend heavily on the gang's reputation for effectiveness and reliability, as communities that pay for protection services expect actual security in return for their payments. Gangs that develop reputations for competence and fair dealing can command higher tribute rates while attracting new clients who seek their services voluntarily. However, gangs that fail to provide adequate protection or that abuse their clients often find their income streams disappearing as communities seek alternative arrangements or simply abandon their territories for safer locations. The most successful protection operations involve gangs that integrate themselves into the communities they serve, providing not only security, but also dispute resolution services, trade facilitation, and coordination with other criminal organizations that operate in the area. Access to rare materials and archaeotech represents the ultimate prize in underhive territorial disputes, as these resources can provide decisive advantages that allow gangs to dominate their rivals through superior equipment and capabilities. Rare materials include exotic metals that can be forged into weapons capable of penetrating advanced armor, chemical compounds that can enhance human performance beyond normal limits, and energy sources that can power equipment far beyond the capabilities of standard underhive technology. The locations where these materials can be found are closely guarded secrets, with gangs often going to extreme lengths to conceal the sources of their technological advantages from potential competitors. Archaeotech discoveries can completely transform the balance of power within underhive society, as gangs that recover functional standard template construct fragments or ancient weapon systems gain capabilities that far exceed those of their rivals. The most valuable archaeotech finds include manufacturing systems that can produce advanced equipment from readily available materials, weapons that incorporate technologies beyond current imperial understanding, and data storage devices that contain technical specifications for equipment that could revolutionize gang warfare. Competition for access to archaeotech sites often involves elaborate espionage operations, as gangs attempt to identify promising archaeological locations while concealing their own discoveries from rival groups that might attempt to seize them through force. The complex honor codes that govern gang behavior create intricate webs of obligation and vendetta that perpetuate cycles of violence across generations of fighters. These codes vary significantly between different gang cultures, but they typically include provisions for avenging fallen comrades, maintaining territorial integrity, and responding to perceived insults or challenges to gang authority. Honor debts can accumulate over years or even decades, creating situations where gangs find themselves locked in conflicts that have little connection to current territorial or economic interests. The most serious honor violations involve betrayals of trust, attacks on non-combatants, or violations of temporary truces that were established to resolve specific disputes. Vendettas between gangs often originate from relatively minor incidents that escalate through cycles of retaliation and counter-retaliation until they become consuming obsessions that define the relationship between rival groups. These conflicts can persist for generations, with new gang members inheriting the hatred and obligations of their predecessors, along with their weapons and territories. The most bitter vendettas involve personal betrayals or attacks that violate the unwritten rules of gang warfare, such as the murder of gang leaders during supposed peace negotiations or attacks on family members who are not directly involved in gang activities. These violations create wounds that can never fully heal, ensuring that the affected gangs will continue their conflicts regardless of the costs involved. Blood debts represent formal obligations that require gangs to seek vengeance for specific wrongs, with the severity of the required response determined by the nature of the original offense and the status of the individuals involved. The murder of a gang leader typically requires the death of the perpetrator or someone of equivalent rank within the offending organization, while lesser offenses might be satisfied through financial compensation or the completion of specific tasks that demonstrate respect for the injured party. Blood debts can be inherited by successors when the original parties die before the obligations are fulfilled, creating situations where gangs find themselves bound by commitments that were made by previous generations of leadership. The economic drivers of gang conflict extend far beyond simple territorial disputes to encompass control over the various illegal enterprises that provide income for underhive criminal organizations. Gambling dens represent particularly lucrative businesses, as they attract customers from throughout the underhive community who seek entertainment and the possibility of quick wealth through games of chance. These establishments typically operate in neutral territories or under the protection of powerful gangs that can guarantee the safety of patrons and the integrity of the gaming operations. Competition for control over gambling territories often involves elaborate schemes to discredit rival operations, sabotage gaming equipment, or intimidate customers into patronizing specific establishments. Fighting pits serve dual purposes as entertainment venues and training facilities, providing gangs with opportunities to test their fighters against opponents from rival organizations, while generating income from spectators who bet on the outcomes of matches. These facilities range from crude arenas carved out of abandoned industrial spaces to elaborate complexes with sophisticated life support systems and medical facilities that can treat injured fighters. The most prestigious fighting pits attract competitors from throughout the underhive community, with victory in major tournaments conferring significant status on both individual fighters and their sponsoring gangs. Control over fighting pit operations provides gangs with intelligence about the capabilities and tactics of rival groups, as well as opportunities to recruit promising fighters who demonstrate exceptional skills during competitions. Corpse starch processing facilities represent some of the most valuable and contested industrial assets in the underhive, as they provide essential protein sources for communities that lack access to conventional food production systems. These facilities process organic waste from throughout the hive structure into edible protein paste that can sustain human life despite its unappetizing appearance and taste. The operation of corpse starch facilities requires sophisticated equipment and technical expertise, making them attractive targets for gangs that seek to control food distribution within their territories. Competition for these facilities often involves complex negotiations between multiple gangs, as the disruption of food production can have catastrophic consequences for entire underhive communities. Black market trade networks connect the underhive to the broader imperial economy through smuggling operations that move contraband goods between different levels of the hive structure and occasionally off-world to other imperial systems. These networks handle everything from weapons and ammunition that exceed legal ownership limits to exotic chemicals and archaeotech components that are prohibited under imperial law. The most successful black market operations involve elaborate distribution systems that can move goods quickly and discreetly while avoiding detection by law enforcement agencies. Gangs that control access to these networks can levy substantial taxes on smuggling operations, while also gaining access to equipment and materials that would otherwise be unavailable in the underhive. The infrastructure required for black market operations includes secure storage facilities, transportation networks, and communication systems that can coordinate activities across multiple gang territories without alerting law enforcement agencies to their existence. Gangs often specialize in specific aspects of smuggling operations, with some groups focusing on procurement and others handling distribution or security services. The most sophisticated operations involve multiple gangs working in coordination to move high-value cargo through complex routes that minimize the risk of detection while maximizing profit margins for all participants. Human trafficking represents one of the most morally reprehensible but economically significant aspects of underhive criminal activity, with gangs capturing individuals for sale as slaves, gladiators, or worse fates in the fighting pits and pleasure dens that cater to the depraved tastes of certain underhive clientele. These operations typically target vulnerable populations such as refugees, orphans, and individuals who lack the protection of powerful gang affiliations. The profits from human trafficking can be enormous, but these activities also attract the attention of imperial authorities who consider slavery to be a serious crime that threatens the stability of imperial society. Drug manufacturing and distribution networks provide steady income streams for gangs that control access to the chemical precursors and laboratory facilities required for producing combat stimulants, recreational drugs, and exotic compounds that enhance human performance. The underhive's toxic environment provides ideal cover for drug production operations, as the chemical signatures of manufacturing processes blend into the background contamination that pervades the lower levels of the hive structure. Competition for control over drug territories often involves violent conflicts between gangs that seek to eliminate rival production facilities while protecting their own operations from interference. House Orlok's industrial empire extends deep into Necromunda's mineral-rich crust through an extensive network of mining operations that represent the backbone of the planet's raw material supply chain. Their extraction facilities burrow through hundreds of levels beneath the main hive structures, following ore veins and mineral deposits that were first identified during the early centuries of imperial colonization. These mining complexes operate as self-contained industrial cities, equipped with atmospheric processors that filter the toxic gases released during excavation, massive excavation equipment that can tunnel through solid rock at remarkable speeds, and processing facilities that refine raw materials into the specialized alloys and compounds required by Necromunda's manufacturing sectors. The mining tunnels controlled by House Orlok create a three-dimensional maze that extends throughout the underhive and beyond, connecting distant territories through passages that only experienced Orlok guides can navigate safely. These tunnels serve multiple purposes beyond simple mineral extraction, functioning as transportation networks for moving personnel and equipment between different mining sites, storage facilities for stockpiling refined materials before shipment to surface facilities, and defensive positions that can be sealed or collapsed to prevent enemy access during territorial conflicts. The deepest mining operations reach into geological layers that predate human settlement, where ancient mineral formations contain exotic elements that cannot be found elsewhere in the local system. Orlok gang fighters emerge from this industrial environment with distinctive characteristics that reflect their lifelong exposure to mining operations and heavy machinery. Their physical appearance typically includes the pale complexion that results from spending most of their lives in artificial lighting, along with the muscular development that comes from years of operating heavy equipment and hauling mining materials through narrow tunnel systems. Industrial tattoos cover their arms and torsos, each design indicating specific technical certifications, mining specializations, or achievements in underground operations. These tattoos serve as both personal identification and professional credentials, allowing experienced miners to demonstrate their qualifications to potential employers or gang recruiters. The cybernetic enhancements commonly found among Orlok gang members reflect the practical necessities of working in Necromunda's hazardous mining environment. Respiratory implants filter toxic gases and particulates that would otherwise cause lung damage or chemical poisoning, while optical augmentations enhance vision in the low light conditions that prevail throughout the tunnel systems. Mechanical limb replacements are common among miners who have suffered industrial accidents, with these prosthetics often incorporating specialized tools and equipment that enhance their effectiveness in mining operations. Neural interfaces allow experienced operators to control complex excavation machinery with thought commands, creating seamless integration between human intelligence and mechanical capability. Orlok weapons reflect their industrial heritage, with gang fighters carrying equipment that has been modified from its original mining applications to serve combat purposes. Industrial cutting lasers designed for precision excavation work become devastating anti-personnel weapons, capable of slicing through armor and flesh with equal efficiency. Explosive charges originally intended for tunnel clearing and ore extraction are repurposed as grenades and demolition devices that can breach fortified positions or collapse structural supports to trap pursuing enemies. Powered mining tools such as rock drills and excavation claws are modified with combat grips and enhanced power sources, creating close combat weapons that can crush bones and tear through metal with terrifying effectiveness. The tactical doctrines employed by Orlok gangs emphasize teamwork and coordinated operations that mirror the collaborative approach required for successful mining ventures. Their fighters operate in small squads that combine different specializations, with demolition experts working alongside heavy weapons specialists and tunnel fighters who excel in close-quarters combat. These teams coordinate their actions through hand signals and coded communications that allow them to maintain operational security while executing complex maneuvers in the maze-like environment of the underhive. Their knowledge of structural engineering and excavation techniques gives them unique advantages in urban warfare, as they can identify weak points in enemy fortifications and exploit underground passages that other gangs cannot access. House Goliath's chemical production empire encompasses vast industrial complexes that manufacture everything from basic industrial solvents to exotic combat enhancement compounds used by Imperial military forces throughout the sector. Their primary facilities occupy massive chamber systems in the middle levels of Hive Primus, where sophisticated atmospheric control systems contain the toxic vapors and radioactive emissions generated by their chemical processes. These production lines operate continuously, with automated systems monitoring reaction chambers, distillation columns, and purification equipment that transforms raw chemical feedstocks into finished products. The scale of these operations is staggering, with some individual production lines capable of generating millions of liters of finished chemicals per day. The pharmaceutical laboratories operated by House Goliath specialize in developing performance-enhancing compounds that push the boundaries of human biological capability. Their research facilities employ teams of biochemists and medical researchers who conduct experiments on volunteer test subjects drawn from the House's extensive workforce. These laboratories maintain strict containment protocols to prevent accidental exposure to experimental compounds, but the nature of their research ensures that workers face constant risks from chemical spills, equipment failures, and unexpected reactions between different substances. The most successful compounds developed in these facilities are distributed to Imperial Guard units, Space Marine chapters, and other military organizations that require chemical enhancement for their personnel. Goliath gang fighters undergo systematic chemical enhancement programs that transform them into towering giants of enhanced muscle mass and bone density. These enhancement protocols begin during adolescence, when candidates receive growth hormone treatments that stimulate rapid physical development beyond normal human parameters. The process continues throughout their careers, with regular injections of muscle-building compounds, pain suppressants, and aggression enhancers that gradually reshape both their physical capabilities and psychological profiles. The side effects of these treatments are severe and often permanent, including organ damage, neurological impairment, and shortened lifespans, but the immediate benefits in terms of combat effectiveness make these risks acceptable to gang members who prioritize strength and intimidation over longevity. The physical transformation undergone by Goliath fighters creates individuals who barely resemble baseline humans, with some specimens reaching heights of over 2.5 meters and developing muscle mass that requires specially manufactured clothing and equipment. Their enhanced bone density makes them resistant to impacts that would cripple normal humans, while their modified nervous systems allow them to ignore pain levels that would incapacitate other fighters. These modifications come at the cost of reduced intellectual capacity and emotional stability, as the chemical treatments that enhance physical performance often damage the brain tissue responsible for complex reasoning and impulse control. Goliath weapons reflect their preference for overwhelming firepower and devastating close combat capabilities. Their fighters carry oversized firearms that would be too heavy for normal humans to operate effectively, including heavy stubbers with reinforced barrels and enhanced ammunition feeds, combat shotguns that fire explosive shells capable of destroying light vehicles, and massive autocannons that can penetrate fortified positions with sustained fire. Their close combat weapons include chain axes with motorized cutting teeth that can sever limbs with single strikes, power hammers that generate devastating electrical discharges on impact, and crude but effective clubs and mauls that rely on brute force to crush enemy defenses. The industrial warfare tactics employed by Goliath gangs emphasize direct assault and overwhelming force rather than subtlety or tactical finesse. Their fighters advance in tight formations that maximize their collective firepower while relying on their enhanced physical resilience to absorb enemy fire. These tactics work particularly well in the confined spaces of the underhive, where the superior range and accuracy of more sophisticated weapons provide minimal advantages over raw firepower and physical intimidation. Goliath gangs often employ chemical weapons and incendiary devices that complement their natural resistance to toxic environments, creating battlefield conditions that favor their enhanced physiology while disadvantaging enemies who lack similar chemical protection. House Escher's pharmaceutical empire operates through a network of sophisticated laboratories and production facilities that maintain the highest standards of cleanliness and precision found anywhere on Necromunda. Their manufacturing complexes employ advanced filtration systems and environmental controls that create sterile working conditions essential for producing medical supplies and pharmaceutical compounds that meet Imperial military specifications. These facilities process exotic organic compounds harvested from off-world sources, combining them with locally produced chemicals to create specialized medications, combat drugs, and biochemical weapons that are distributed throughout the sector. The complexity of these manufacturing processes requires highly trained technicians and quality control specialists who undergo years of education before they are qualified to work with the most sensitive compounds. The research laboratories operated by House Escher push the boundaries of Imperial biotechnology through experiments that explore the limits of human biochemistry and genetic modification. Their scientists conduct studies on everything from combat drug effectiveness to the development of new toxins that can incapacitate enemies without causing permanent harm. These research programs often involve collaboration with off-world medical institutions and Adeptus Mechanicus Biologus specialists who provide access to advanced equipment and theoretical knowledge that enhances the House's research capabilities. The results of these studies are carefully guarded trade secrets that provide House Escher with significant competitive advantages in the pharmaceutical marketplace. Escher gang fighters represent the pinnacle of biochemical enhancement, with their all-female membership undergoing sophisticated modification programs that enhance their natural agility and reflexes while maintaining their intellectual capabilities. These enhancement protocols focus on improving neural transmission speeds, muscle fiber efficiency, and sensory acuity rather than simply increasing raw physical strength. The treatments enhance their natural feminine characteristics while providing them with combat capabilities that far exceed those of baseline humans. Their enhanced metabolism allows them to process toxins and combat drugs more efficiently than other fighters, giving them resistance to chemical weapons while enabling them to use performance-enhancing substances that would be lethal to unmodified individuals. The distinctive appearance of Escher fighters reflects their house's emphasis on aesthetic refinement combined with deadly functionality. Their enhanced physiques maintain feminine proportions while developing the lean muscle definition and enhanced reflexes that make them formidable combatants. They often incorporate decorative elements into their combat gear, including ornate weapon decorations, stylized armor designs, and elaborate hairstyles that serve both aesthetic and practical purposes. Their clothing and equipment are typically form-fitting and lightweight, allowing for maximum mobility while providing adequate protection against the environmental hazards common in underhive combat situations. Escher weapons emphasize precision and lethality over raw destructive power, reflecting their tactical preference for surgical strikes and targeted eliminations. Their fighters carry needle rifles that fire toxin-coated projectiles capable of delivering lethal doses of exotic poisons through minimal wounds, plasma pistols that generate precisely controlled energy bursts for eliminating high-value targets, and monomolecular blades that can slice through armor and flesh with surgical precision. Their arsenal also includes a wide variety of chemical weapons, including gas grenades that release incapacitating toxins, poison dart launchers that can eliminate enemies silently, and aerosol dispensers that create toxic clouds capable of clearing entire rooms of hostile fighters. The biochemical warfare expertise of Escher gangs extends beyond simple weapon usage to encompass sophisticated knowledge of toxicology, pharmacology, and environmental manipulation. Their fighters can identify and exploit chemical vulnerabilities in enemy equipment and personnel, using their understanding of biochemistry to develop targeted countermeasures against specific opponents. They often employ area denial tactics that involve contaminating enemy territories with persistent toxins, making these areas uninhabitable for extended periods while forcing rival gangs to abandon valuable positions. Their knowledge of antidotes and medical countermeasures allows them to operate in contaminated environments that would be lethal to other fighters. House Van Saar's technological manufacturing capabilities represent the most advanced industrial operations found anywhere on Necromunda, incorporating fragments of standard template construct technology and Dark Age manufacturing techniques that produce equipment far superior to standard Imperial specifications. Their primary production facilities occupy carefully climate-controlled environments where precision machinery operates under the supervision of tech savants who have spent decades mastering the intricacies of ancient manufacturing protocols. These facilities can produce weapons, armor, and electronic equipment that incorporates technological principles that most Imperial engineers cannot fully comprehend, creating products that command premium prices in both legitimate and black market trading networks. The Archaeotech repositories maintained by House Van Saar contain carefully preserved fragments of ancient technology that serve as templates for their advanced manufacturing operations. These facilities employ sophisticated security systems and environmental controls to protect irreplaceable technological artifacts from theft, sabotage, or accidental damage. Access to these repositories is restricted to senior House members who have demonstrated both technical competence and absolute loyalty to the Van Saar leadership. The knowledge contained within these facilities represents thousands of years of accumulated technological expertise, including manufacturing specifications for equipment that could revolutionize Imperial military capabilities if it were ever mass-produced. Van Saar gang fighters benefit from access to equipment that far exceeds the technological capabilities available to other underhive gangs. Their weapons incorporate advanced targeting systems that can lock onto enemies through smoke and debris, enhanced power sources that provide sustained high-energy output without the frequent recharging required by standard Imperial equipment, and sophisticated ammunition types that can adapt their penetration characteristics based on target composition. Their armor systems include energy shields that can deflect Law's weapon fire and kinetic projectiles, environmental suits that provide complete protection against chemical and biological hazards, and integrated communication systems that allow for real-time coordination across multiple combat zones. The distinctive appearance of Van Saar fighters reflects their house's emphasis on technological sophistication and functional efficiency. Their form-fitting bodysuits incorporate advanced materials that provide environmental protection while enhancing mobility and sensory capabilities. These suits include integrated optical systems that enhance vision in low-light conditions, atmospheric filters that protect against toxic environments, and neural interfaces that allow seamless integration with their advanced weaponry. The suit's sleek design and metallic finish create an intimidating appearance that emphasizes the technological superiority of Van Saar equipment over the crude gear used by other gangs. Van Saar tactical doctrines emphasize the effective utilization of their technological advantages to achieve victory through superior firepower and battlefield awareness rather than numerical superiority or brute force. Their fighters operate in small, highly mobile units that can coordinate their actions through advanced communication systems while maintaining constant surveillance of enemy positions through sophisticated sensor networks. These tactics allow them to identify and exploit enemy weaknesses while avoiding direct confrontation with larger forces that might overwhelm their limited numbers. Their ability to repair and maintain their advanced equipment in field conditions gives them significant advantages in prolonged conflicts where other gangs might be forced to withdraw due to equipment failures or ammunition shortages. House Cawdor's dominance over Necromunda's waste recycling operations stems from their control of vast processing facilities that transform the planet's accumulated industrial detritus into usable materials and energy sources. These massive complexes occupy the lower levels of multiple hive cities, where conveyor systems and automated sorting mechanisms process millions of tons of discarded materials daily. The facilities operate in environments so toxic that unprotected exposure would kill baseline humans within minutes, requiring specialized equipment and protective protocols that House Cawdor has perfected over centuries of operation. Their workers labor in hazmat suits and respirators while operating machinery that can break down everything from discarded metal components to biological waste, extracting valuable materials that can be recycled into new products or processed into fuel for the hive city's power systems. The recycling operations controlled by House Cawdor generate enormous quantities of reclaimed materials that form a crucial component of Necromunda's industrial supply chain. Their facilities process scrap metal into refined alloys, extract rare earth elements from discarded electronic components, and convert organic waste into protein-rich biomass that supplements the hive city's food production. These operations require sophisticated chemical processing systems that can separate useful materials from contaminated waste streams, along with quality control procedures that ensure the recycled materials meet the specifications required by their industrial customers. The house maintains exclusive contracts with several major manufacturing concerns, providing them with steady revenue streams while securing their position as indispensable partners in Necromunda's industrial ecosystem. The fanatical religious devotion that characterizes House Cawdor's culture centers on their interpretation of the cult of redemption, a militant branch of the imperial creed that emphasizes purification through violence and suffering. Their doctrine teaches that the accumulated sins of humanity have corrupted the galaxy, creating the toxic environment and spiritual decay that plague imperial civilization. House Cawdor's leadership preaches that their waste recycling operations serve as a metaphor for the spiritual cleansing that humanity requires, transforming the physical corruption of industrial waste into useful materials, just as violence and suffering can purify the souls of the faithful. This religious philosophy permeates every aspect of house culture, from the blessing ceremonies performed over recycling equipment to the ritual scarification that marks advancement within their hierarchy. Cawdor gang fighters emerge from this environment as zealous warriors who view combat as a sacred duty rather than simple territorial competition. Their recruitment draws heavily from the most desperate populations of the underhive, offering food, shelter, and spiritual purpose to individuals who have been abandoned by imperial society. These recruits undergo intensive indoctrination programs that combine religious education with combat training, creating fighters who are willing to sacrifice their lives for their cause without hesitation. The gangs operate under the direct authority of house chaplains who provide spiritual guidance and ensure that their activities remain aligned with Cawdor religious doctrine. The weapons carried by Cawdor fighters reflect their house's philosophy of redemption through resourcefulness and divine providence. Their armaments are typically assembled from salvaged components that have been blessed through elaborate religious ceremonies, creating crude but effective weapons that embody their belief in making the best use of available resources. Autogun receivers are combined with scavenged barrels and improvised stocks, while hand weapons are forged from reclaimed metal and decorated with religious iconography. These weapons may lack the precision and reliability of factory-manufactured equipment, but they are maintained with religious devotion and often prove surprisingly effective in the hands of fighters who view their armaments as sacred relics. The distinctive appearance of Cawdor gang members reflects their commitment to their religious beliefs and their acceptance of suffering as a path to spiritual purification. Their bodies bear extensive ritual scarification that indicates their rank within the gang hierarchy and their level of devotion to the cult of redemption. These scars are created through ceremonial cutting rituals that serve both as initiation rites and ongoing demonstrations of faith. Their clothing typically incorporates religious symbols, prayer scrolls, and protective amulets that have been blessed by house chaplains. Gas masks and respiratory equipment are common accessories, as their work in waste processing facilities exposes them to atmospheric conditions that would be lethal to unprotected individuals. Cawdor territorial holdings typically center around waste processing facilities and recycling centers that provide both strategic value and symbolic significance to their religious mission. These locations offer defensive advantages due to their robust construction and complex internal layouts, while their toxic environments create natural barriers that discourage attacks from rival gangs. The gangs establish shrine rooms and prayer chambers within these facilities, creating sacred spaces where fighters can perform religious observances and receive spiritual guidance from their chaplains. These territories often extend into surrounding residential areas where Cawdor gangs provide security and religious services to communities that share their theological beliefs. House Goliath operates through an extensive network of information brokerage operations that provide them with influence far exceeding their apparent industrial capacity. Their legitimate business interests include data processing facilities that handle routine administrative functions for other major houses, communication networks that facilitate trade between different hive levels, and security consulting services that help corporations protect their assets from industrial espionage. However, their true power derives from their sophisticated intelligence gathering operations that monitor the activities of rival houses, government officials, and criminal organizations throughout Necromunda. This information is carefully cataloged and analyzed by teams of specialists who identify patterns and opportunities that can be exploited for political or economic advantage. The surveillance networks controlled by House Goliath extend throughout the hive cities and deep into the underhive, using a combination of electronic monitoring systems, human agents, and automated data collection programs to gather intelligence on their targets. Their facilities include advanced communication centers that can intercept and decode encrypted transmissions, data analysis laboratories that process information from multiple sources, and secure storage systems that protect sensitive intelligence from discovery by rival organizations. The House maintains carefully compartmentalized operations that prevent any single individual from gaining access to their complete intelligence database, ensuring that security breaches cannot compromise their entire network. Goliath gang fighters specialize in covert operations that require patience, subtlety, and sophisticated technical skills rather than brute force or overwhelming firepower. Their training emphasizes stealth techniques, electronic warfare capabilities, and psychological manipulation tactics that allow them to achieve their objectives without direct confrontation whenever possible. These fighters undergo extensive conditioning programs that enhance their ability to operate in low-light environments, resist interrogation techniques, and maintain operational security under extreme stress. Their enhanced sensory capabilities allow them to detect subtle environmental changes that might indicate the presence of enemies or surveillance equipment. The equipment used by Goliath gangs reflects their emphasis on stealth and information warfare, with weapons and gear designed for silent operation and minimal detectability. Their firearms include silenced auto pistols and needle rifles that can eliminate targets without alerting nearby enemies, while their close combat weapons feature monomolecular edges that can kill silently and efficiently. Electronic warfare equipment allows them to disable enemy communication systems, override security protocols, and gather intelligence from captured data storage devices. Their distinctive dark clothing and optical enhancement equipment create an intimidating appearance that emphasizes their mysterious nature while providing practical advantages in low-light combat situations. Goliath territorial control operates differently from other gang structures, as they maintain multiple safe houses and hidden facilities throughout the underhive rather than establishing obvious strongholds that could be targeted by rival groups. Their territories are often difficult to identify, as they prefer to operate from concealed locations that provide easy access to escape routes and communication networks. These facilities include surveillance posts that monitor gang territories and trade routes, interrogation centers where captured enemies can be questioned for intelligence, and equipment caches that support extended covert operations. The House maintains redundant communication systems that allow their operatives to coordinate activities even when primary networks are compromised. The various outcast groups that exist outside the traditional house structure represent a significant portion of the underhive population, including communities that have been rejected by mainstream imperial society due to genetic mutations, criminal histories, or cultural differences that make them incompatible with the rigid hierarchies that characterize hive city life. These groups have developed their own survival strategies and social structures that allow them to thrive in the harsh environment of the underhive, despite their lack of access to the resources and protection provided by house affiliation. Their relationships with the major gang organizations range from hostile competition to mutually beneficial cooperation, depending on the specific circumstances and the personalities of the individuals involved. Ratskin tribes represent one of the most distinctive outcast communities found in Necromunda's underhive, consisting of individuals who have rejected the technological civilization of the hive cities in favor of a primitive lifestyle that emphasizes survival skills and spiritual connection to the harsh environment. These tribes trace their origins to the original human inhabitants of Necromunda, who survived the planet's industrial transformation by adapting to life in the deep underground passages and abandoned industrial zones. Their culture incorporates elements of ancient shamanism with practical knowledge of underhive survival, creating a unique belief system that views the toxic environment as a living entity that must be respected and appeased through proper rituals and offerings. Ratskin warriors possess exceptional tracking abilities and environmental knowledge that allow them to navigate the most dangerous areas of the underhive with confidence and skill. Their intimate familiarity with the tunnel systems, toxic zones, and hidden passages gives them significant advantages when operating in their native environment. These fighters typically carry primitive weapons that have been crafted from salvaged materials and decorated with tribal markings, including bows that fire arrows tipped with toxins extracted from underhive fauna, spears with metal points forged from reclaimed industrial components, and knives with blades that have been treated with substances that enhance their cutting effectiveness. Their combat tactics emphasize stealth, ambush techniques, and the use of environmental hazards to eliminate enemies without direct confrontation. The spiritual beliefs of Ratskin tribes center on their interpretation of the underhive as a living ecosystem that requires careful balance and respect from its human inhabitants. Their shamans perform rituals that are intended to maintain harmony between their communities and the toxic environment, using ceremonies that incorporate elements of ancestor worship, environmental protection, and practical survival knowledge. These beliefs often put them into conflict with gang organizations that view the underhive simply as territory to be exploited for economic gain, leading to confrontations that test the tribe's ability to defend their traditional territories against better-equipped opponents. Scavvy communities consist of individuals who have been so severely mutated by exposure to the toxic environment that they can no longer pass for baseline humans, forcing them to form their own settlements in the deepest and most contaminated areas of the underhive. These mutations range from relatively minor cosmetic changes to severe physical and mental alterations that fundamentally transform their capabilities and limitations. Some scavvies develop enhanced resistance to radiation and chemical toxins, allowing them to survive in environments that would be instantly lethal to normal humans. Others experience changes that enhance their physical strength, sensory capabilities, or cognitive functions, though these benefits often come at the cost of other abilities or shortened lifespans. Scavvy settlements typically occupy areas that other underhive inhabitants consider uninhabitable, including zones with extreme radiation levels, persistent chemical contamination, or infestations of dangerous mutant creatures. Their communities have developed specialized techniques for extracting resources from these hostile environments, including methods for processing contaminated materials into usable forms and strategies for defending against the predators that inhabit the deepest levels of the underhive. Their knowledge of advanced scavenging techniques and their ability to operate in extremely hazardous conditions make them valuable trading partners for gangs that need access to materials or information from the most dangerous areas of the underhive. The weapons and equipment used by scavvy communities reflect their adaptation to the extreme conditions of their environment, with gear that has been modified to function in high radiation zones, corrosive atmospheres, and other hazardous conditions. Their weapons often incorporate biological components harvested from mutant creatures, creating hybrid devices that combine mechanical and organic elements in ways that would be considered heretical by Imperial authorities. These weapons may be crude in appearance, but they are often surprisingly effective due to their adaptation to the specific combat conditions found in the deepest levels of the underhive. Mutant tribes represent the most diverse and unpredictable element of the underhive's outcast population, encompassing communities of individuals whose genetic modifications have created entirely new subspecies of humanity. These mutations result from exposure to the exotic energies and chemical compounds that permeate Necromunda's industrial environment, creating changes that can be inherited by subsequent generations and gradually transform entire populations. Some mutant tribes develop collective abilities that allow them to communicate through telepathic links, coordinate their actions through pheromone signals, or share sensory information across multiple individuals. The social structures of mutant tribes vary dramatically based on their specific genetic modifications and the environmental pressures they face in their territorial holdings. Some tribes develop highly cooperative societies where individual survival depends on the success of the entire community, while others create hierarchical systems based on the specific mutations that provide advantages in combat or resource gathering. Their relationships with baseline human communities range from peaceful coexistence to violent hostility, depending on the nature of their mutations and their previous experiences with persecution or acceptance. The role of these fringe elements in the underhive ecosystem extends far beyond simple survival, as they provide essential services and capabilities that the major gang organizations cannot replicate through their own resources. Ratskin tribes serve as guides and scouts for expeditions into the most dangerous areas of the underhive, using their environmental knowledge to help other groups navigate hazardous terrain and avoid the most dangerous predators. Scavvy communities provide access to materials and locations that would be impossible for baseline humans to exploit, while their resistance to environmental hazards allows them to operate in areas that serve as natural barriers against enemy infiltration. The complex relationships between fringe elements and major house-affiliated gangs create a dynamic web of alliances, conflicts, and temporary agreements that shift constantly based on changing circumstances and opportunities. Gang leaders often find it necessary to negotiate with outcast communities when they need access to specific territories or resources, leading to arrangements that can range from simple commercial transactions to complex political alliances that involve mutual defense agreements and shared intelligence. These relationships are complicated by the prejudices and fears that many baseline humans harbor toward mutants and outcasts, creating tensions that can erupt into violence when negotiations break down or when external pressures force groups to compete for limited resources. The toxic fumes that rise from House Caudor's recycling operations carry more than just industrial pollutants. They bear the fervent prayers and apocalyptic sermons of the Cult of Redemption, a fanatical religious movement that has taken root in the deepest levels of Necromunda's underhive. This extremist interpretation of the Imperial Creed preaches that the galaxy has become so corrupted by sin and heresy that only through the complete destruction of mutants, heretics, and other perceived abominations can humanity achieve the purification necessary for salvation. The cult's doctrine holds that the Emperor's divine plan requires faithful servants to actively seek out and eliminate the sources of corruption that plague imperial society, making violence not merely acceptable, but a sacred duty that determines the eternal fate of the faithful. The theological foundation of the Cult of Redemption rests on a radical interpretation of imperial scripture that emphasizes humanity's fallen state and the necessity of violent purification to restore divine favor. Redemptionist preachers teach that the toxic environment of Necromunda, the prevalence of mutation among the underhive population, and the moral decay evident throughout hive society represent clear evidence that the planet has been abandoned by the Emperor's grace due to insufficient devotion among its inhabitants. Their sermons describe a cosmic struggle between purity and corruption, where every act of violence against the unclean serves to tip the balance toward eventual redemption, while tolerance or mercy toward mutants and heretics only accelerates humanity's spiritual decline. The cult's recruitment efforts target the most desperate and downtrodden populations of the underhive, offering spiritual purpose and community belonging to individuals who have been rejected by mainstream imperial society. Redemptionist preachers establish makeshift chapels in abandoned industrial facilities, waste processing centers, and refugee settlements where they provide basic necessities like food and shelter while delivering their message of salvation through violence. These recruitment centers serve multiple functions, operating as distribution points for charitable aid, training facilities for new converts, and coordination centers for planning purification operations against identified targets throughout the underhive. The appeal of redemptionist doctrine to underhive populations stems from its promise that even the most degraded and hopeless individuals can achieve salvation through participation in the cult's violent mission. Unlike the established imperial creed, which often emphasizes acceptance of one's station and patient endurance of suffering, the cult of redemption offers immediate empowerment and the opportunity to actively participate in cosmic events that will determine humanity's fate. Converts find meaning in their suffering by viewing it as preparation for their sacred mission, while their participation in violent purification campaigns provides them with a sense of agency and purpose that is otherwise unavailable in their powerless circumstances. The decentralized leadership structure of the cult of redemption reflects both the chaotic nature of underhive society and the practical necessities of operating an underground religious movement in an environment where imperial authorities view extremist activities with suspicion. Individual redemptionist preachers establish their own cells and congregations, developing their own interpretations of cult doctrine while maintaining loose connections with other groups through shared theological principles and occasional coordination of major purification campaigns. These preachers typically emerge from the ranks of experienced converts who demonstrate exceptional devotion and leadership capabilities, though some are former imperial clergy who have embraced the cult's radical interpretation of orthodox doctrine. Each redemptionist cell operates with considerable autonomy, allowing preachers to adapt their message and tactics to the specific conditions and populations they encounter in their territories. Some cells focus primarily on charitable work and community organization, using their religious authority to provide social services while gradually indoctrinating recipients with cult ideology. Others emphasize militant action, organizing armed groups that conduct raids against mutant communities and heretical organizations. The most extreme cells engage in terrorism and mass violence, viewing any compromise with the corrupt underhive society as betrayal of their sacred mission. The establishment of redemptionist gangs represents the militant arm of the extremist faith, transforming religious devotion into organized violence that can compete with traditional underhive gangs for territorial control and resources. These gangs differ from conventional criminal organizations in their motivation and operational methods, as their primary objective involves purifying their territories of corruption rather than accumulating wealth or power. Redemptionist gang fighters undergo extensive indoctrination that combines combat training with religious education, creating warriors who view their weapons as sacred implements and their enemies as literal manifestations of evil that must be destroyed without mercy or hesitation. The recruitment process for redemptionist gangs involves intensive screening to identify candidates who possess both the physical capabilities necessary for combat and the psychological profile that makes them suitable for the cult's violent mission. Potential recruits undergo trials that test their commitment to redemptionist doctrine, their willingness to inflict violence on designated targets, and their ability to maintain operational security when conducting covert operations. Those who successfully complete these trials receive weapons and equipment that have been blessed through elaborate religious ceremonies, creating a sense of divine sanction for their activities while reinforcing their commitment to the cult's objectives. Redemptionist gang weapons reflect the cult's emphasis on purification through fire and destruction, with fighters carrying flamethrowers, incendiary grenades, and other devices designed to cleanse corruption through burning. These weapons serve both practical and symbolic purposes, as fire represents the purifying power of the Emperor's divine wrath, while also providing effective means for eliminating mutant infestations and destroying heretical materials. Gang arsenals also include conventional firearms that have been modified with religious iconography and blessed ammunition, creating weapons that embody the fusion of violence and faith that characterizes redemptionist ideology. The tactical doctrines employed by redemptionist gangs emphasize aggressive assault tactics and the complete destruction of enemy forces rather than territorial conquest or resource extraction. Their operations typically involve coordinated attacks against specific targets identified as sources of corruption, including mutant communities, heretical cults, and criminal organizations that engage in activities deemed spiritually contaminating. These attacks are planned and executed with religious fervor, as gang members view their participation as acts of worship that demonstrate their devotion to the Emperor's divine plan for human purification. The methods employed by redemptionist gangs in their purification campaigns often involve extreme violence that exceeds the brutality typical of underhive gang warfare. Their operations include mass executions of suspected mutants, the burning of entire residential blocks believed to harbor heretical activities, and the systematic destruction of cultural artifacts and historical records that contradict redemptionist interpretations of imperial doctrine. These activities are justified through theological arguments that present any mercy toward the corrupt as complicity in their sins, making total destruction the only acceptable response to identified sources of spiritual contamination. The tension between redemptionist activities and the established imperial creed creates significant conflicts with official ecclesiarchy doctrine, as the cult's radical interpretations often contradict the more moderate teachings promoted by orthodox imperial clergy. The ecclesiarchy maintains that while the destruction of mutants and heretics serves the emperor's will, such activities must be conducted through proper channels and under the authority of legitimate imperial institutions. Redemptionist preachers reject this position, arguing that the corruption of imperial society has compromised official religious authorities and made independent action necessary for achieving true purification. Official ecclesiarchy representatives view the cult of redemption with suspicion and hostility, recognizing that its radical doctrines threaten the stability and authority of established religious institutions. The cult's emphasis on individual revelation and direct divine inspiration challenges the ecclesiarchy's monopoly on interpreting imperial scripture, while its violent methods create security problems that attract unwanted attention from imperial authorities. Ecclesiarchy officials often work with local law enforcement agencies to suppress redemptionist activities, though these efforts are complicated by the cult's decentralized structure and its ability to blend into the general underhive population. The doctrinal disputes between redemptionists and orthodox imperial clergy center on fundamental questions about the nature of divine authority and the proper methods for achieving spiritual purification. Orthodox doctrine emphasizes the importance of institutional hierarchy and gradual reform through established channels, while redemptionist theology calls for immediate and violent action against all sources of corruption, regardless of their official status or political connections. These theological differences reflect deeper conflicts about the role of individual conscience versus institutional authority in determining proper religious behavior. The impact of redemptionist activities on underhive society extends far beyond their direct victims, as their campaigns of purification create an atmosphere of fear and suspicion that affects entire communities. Residents of areas with active redemptionist cells must constantly evaluate their behavior and associations to avoid being identified as targets for purification, leading to social fragmentation and the breakdown of traditional community structures. The cult's influence also affects the broader gang ecosystem, as traditional criminal organizations must allocate resources to defend against redemptionist attacks while adapting their operations to avoid activities that might attract the cult's attention. The psychological appeal of redemptionist doctrine to underhive populations reflects the desperate circumstances and limited opportunities that characterize life in Necromunda's depths. The cult's promise of spiritual significance and cosmic purpose provides meaning to individuals whose daily existence involves constant struggle against poverty, disease, and violence. Their emphasis on active participation in divine plans offers an alternative to the passive acceptance promoted by orthodox imperial doctrine, allowing converts to view their suffering as preparation for a sacred mission rather than simply the inevitable consequence of their low social status. The recruitment strategies employed by redemptionist preachers exploit the social and economic vulnerabilities that make underhive populations susceptible to extremist ideologies. Their charitable activities create dependencies that facilitate indoctrination, while their promise of community belonging appeals to individuals who have been isolated by the harsh realities of underhive life. The cult's emphasis on spiritual equality among the faithful provides psychological compensation for the material inequalities that define underhive society, creating a sense of empowerment that makes violent action seem both justified and necessary. The operational security measures employed by redemptionist cells reflect their awareness that their activities violate imperial law and attract hostile attention from both official authorities and rival organizations. Cell members use coded language and symbolic communication to coordinate their activities while maintaining plausible deniability about their involvement in violent operations. Their meeting places are frequently changed and carefully concealed, often utilizing abandoned industrial facilities or remote locations that provide multiple escape routes in case of discovery by hostile forces. The toxic industrial legacy of Necromunda's millennia of unregulated manufacturing has created a diverse population of mutant communities whose genetic abnormalities reflect the specific contamination patterns found throughout different regions of the underhive. These mutations manifest in countless variations, from relatively minor cosmetic changes that allow individuals to maintain some connection to baseline human society, to severe physiological alterations that transform their bearers into something barely recognizable as human. The most common mutations result from exposure to the heavy metals and radioactive isotopes that permeate the atmosphere of former industrial zones, causing changes in bone density, skin pigmentation, and organ function that can be passed down through multiple generations of offspring. Chemical contamination from House Goliath's pharmaceutical operations has produced mutant populations with enhanced metabolisms capable of processing toxins that would kill normal humans within minutes of exposure. These individuals often develop enlarged livers and modified kidney structures that allow them to filter dangerous substances from their bloodstream while extracting useful compounds that enhance their physical performance. Their skin frequently takes on unusual coloration ranging from pale green to deep purple, reflecting the specific chemical cocktails that shape their genetic development. Some of these mutants have developed the ability to secrete mild toxins through their pores, creating a natural defense mechanism against predators while making them valuable allies for gangs that specialize in chemical warfare. Radiation exposure from damaged reactor systems and improperly stored nuclear materials has created mutant communities with dramatically altered skeletal structures and sensory capabilities. These individuals often develop additional limbs or digits that provide enhanced manipulation capabilities, while their nervous systems adapt to process electromagnetic radiation in ways that grant them limited ability to detect energy signatures and electronic equipment. Their eyes frequently develop unusual structures that allow them to perceive infrared and ultraviolet wavelengths, giving them significant advantages when operating in the low light conditions common throughout the underhive. The most severely affected individuals may develop chitinous growths or metallic deposits in their bones that provide natural armor protection while creating distinctive appearances that mark them as unmistakably mutant. The industrial solvents and exotic compounds used in advanced manufacturing processes have produced some of the most bizarre mutations found in the underhive, including individuals whose cellular structures have been fundamentally altered to incorporate synthetic materials. These mutants may develop organs that function as biological chemical processors, allowing them to derive nutrition from substances that would be toxic to normal humans while producing useful compounds as metabolic byproducts. Their blood often takes on unusual properties, becoming acidic enough to dissolve metal or developing coagulation factors that make them extremely difficult to kill through conventional wounds. Some of these individuals develop symbiotic relationships with mechanical devices, their nervous systems adapting to interface directly with electronic equipment in ways that blur the line between biological and artificial intelligence. Scavenger communities have emerged as essential components of the underhive economy. Their specialized knowledge and willingness to operate in hazardous environments, making them indispensable partners for gangs and legitimate businesses that require access to materials from the most dangerous areas of the hive structure. These groups possess intimate knowledge of the underhive's geography, including the locations of ancient industrial sites, abandoned research facilities, and crashed transport vessels that may contain valuable archaeotech or rare materials. Their expertise extends beyond simple location knowledge to encompass sophisticated techniques for safely extracting materials from contaminated environments, neutralizing security systems that protect valuable caches, and identifying the most valuable components within complex technological assemblies. The most successful scavenger operations involve teams of specialists who combine different skills and capabilities to overcome the challenges presented by specific salvage sites. Radiation specialists use modified detection equipment and protective gear to operate in areas with dangerous levels of radioactive contamination, while chemical experts can neutralize toxic atmospheres and identify valuable compounds within complex waste streams. Technical specialists possess the knowledge necessary to safely dismantle complex machinery and identify components that retain value despite decades or centuries of abandonment. These teams often include mutants whose genetic modifications provide natural resistance to specific environmental hazards, allowing them to access areas that would be lethal to baseline humans even with protective equipment. The archaeotech recovery operations conducted by elite scavenger teams represent some of the most dangerous and potentially lucrative activities in the underhive, as these expeditions target sites that may contain standard template construct fragments or other technological artifacts from the dark age of technology. These sites are typically located in the deepest and most hazardous areas of the underhive, where ancient industrial accidents, security systems, and environmental contamination create multiple layers of danger that must be overcome to reach valuable targets. The recovery process requires specialized equipment for detecting and safely extracting delicate technological components, along with the expertise necessary to distinguish genuine archaeotech from the countless pieces of advanced but conventional imperial technology that litter the underhive. Scrap metal recovery forms the backbone of many scavenger operations, as the underhive contains vast quantities of discarded industrial equipment and structural materials that can be processed into useful forms. The most valuable scrap includes rare alloys and exotic metals that were used in specialized manufacturing processes, along with components that contain precious metals or rare earth elements essential for advanced electronics. Scavenger teams use everything from simple hand tools to sophisticated cutting equipment to extract these materials from their original installations, often working in dangerous conditions where structural collapses, toxic gas releases, and equipment failures pose constant threats to their safety. The social hierarchy within scavenger communities reflects both the dangerous nature of their work and the valuable skills required for successful operations. Experienced team leaders who have survived multiple dangerous expeditions command significant respect and authority, their knowledge of safe operating procedures and profitable salvage sites making them essential assets for their communities. These leaders often control access to the most valuable salvage territories, establishing informal monopolies that allow them to extract tribute from other scavengers who wish to operate in their domains. Technical specialists who possess rare knowledge about specific types of equipment or archaeotech occupy positions of high status, as their expertise can mean the difference between a profitable expedition and a catastrophic failure that results in the loss of expensive equipment and valuable team members. The equipment used by professional scavenger teams reflects the specialized nature of their work and the extreme conditions they encounter during their operations. Atmospheric suits with enhanced filtration systems protect against chemical contamination while providing life support in environments where the air itself has become toxic or oxygen depleted. Cutting tools range from simple plasma torches to sophisticated molecular disassemblers that can separate valuable components from complex assemblies without damaging delicate internal structures. Detection equipment includes radiation monitors, chemical analyzers, and archaeotech scanners that can identify valuable materials concealed within larger structures or buried under layers of industrial debris. Organized scavenger guilds have developed formal structures that provide their members with training, equipment, and territorial protection in exchange for shares of recovered materials and adherence to guild regulations. These organizations operate sophisticated apprenticeship programs that teach new members the technical skills and safety procedures necessary for successful scavenging operations. Guild facilities include workshops where recovered materials can be processed and refined, storage areas for stockpiling valuable finds until market conditions favor their sale, and training centers where members can practice using specialized equipment under controlled conditions. The largest guilds maintain relationships with legitimate businesses and gang organizations, providing regular supplies of specific materials in exchange for protection and access to advanced equipment. The territorial disputes that arise between competing scavenger groups often center on control over the most profitable salvage sites, particularly locations that contain renewable resources or ongoing sources of valuable materials. Ancient manufacturing facilities may continue to produce useful components through automated systems that operate for centuries after their original operators abandoned them, creating steady income streams for scavengers who can maintain access to these sites. Crashed spacecraft and abandoned research installations represent finite but extremely valuable resources that can generate enormous profits for the groups that successfully claim them. These disputes are complicated by the fact that many valuable sites are located in neutral territory or areas controlled by powerful gang organizations that view scavenger operations as potential sources of tribute revenue. The relationship between scavenger communities and the various gang organizations that control underhive territories involves complex negotiations over access rights, protection services, and revenue-sharing arrangements. Gangs often view scavenger operations as valuable sources of income through taxation and tribute, but they also recognize that excessive interference can drive scavenger teams to seek alternative territories or abandon profitable sites entirely. The most successful arrangements involve partnerships where gangs provide security and logistical support for major scavenging expeditions in exchange for predetermined shares of recovered materials or guaranteed access to specific types of equipment and supplies. Feral mutant tribes represent the most desperate and dangerous element of the underhive's dispossessed population, their severe genetic modifications and social isolation having transformed them into predatory communities that survive by preying upon other underhive inhabitants. These tribes typically consist of individuals whose mutations are so severe that they cannot integrate into baseline human society, forcing them to band together in communities that develop their own survival strategies and cultural practices. Their isolation from mainstream underhive society has allowed them to evolve unique social structures and behavioral patterns that often emphasize violence and predation as primary means of resource acquisition. The hunting strategies employed by feral mutant tribes reflect their adaptation to the harsh environment of the underhive and their need to compete with better-equipped human communities for access to limited resources. These tribes often develop specialized techniques for tracking prey through the maze like passages of the lower hive levels, using their enhanced senses and intimate knowledge of local terrain to identify vulnerable targets and plan coordinated attacks. Their mutations frequently provide them with natural advantages for specific types of hunting, including enhanced night vision that allows them to operate effectively in areas with minimal lighting, improved hearing that can detect the movement of potential prey at considerable distances, and modified digestive systems that allow them to derive nutrition from sources that would be inedible to baseline humans. The weapons and equipment used by feral mutant tribes typically consist of crude implements fashioned from salvaged materials and modified to take advantage of their specific physical capabilities. Mutants with enhanced strength may carry massive clubs or hammers forged from scrap metal and weighted with dense materials, while those with improved agility might prefer lightweight spears or bladed weapons that can be thrown with deadly accuracy. Some tribes develop biological weapons that exploit their natural toxin production or acidic secretions, creating projectiles or coating weapons with substances that can incapacitate or kill prey through chemical means rather than simple physical trauma. The territorial holdings of feral mutant tribes are typically located in the most inhospitable areas of the underhive, including zones with extreme radiation levels, persistent chemical contamination, or infestations of dangerous fauna that make these locations unattractive to other communities. These environments often provide natural protection against intrusion by better equipped enemies, as the environmental hazards that the mutants have adapted to survive can quickly kill or incapacitate attackers who lack similar resistance. The tribes establish their settlements in locations that offer multiple escape routes and defensive positions, allowing them to withdraw when faced with superior forces while maintaining the ability to launch surprise attacks against enemies who venture into their territory. The struggle for basic survival resources creates constant conflict throughout the deepest levels of the underhive, where access to clean water, edible food, and adequate shelter determines the difference between life and death for the countless individuals who exist outside the protection of organized communities. Clean water represents perhaps the most critical resource in this environment, as the contamination that pervades the underhive makes most available water sources dangerous or lethal to consume without extensive treatment. The few functional purification systems that remain operational in abandoned facilities become focal points for territorial disputes, as control over these installations allows communities to support larger populations while providing valuable trade commodities for exchange with other groups. Food scarcity drives many of the most desperate conflicts in the underhive, as the limited sources of edible protein and nutrients force communities to compete aggressively for access to productive areas. Fungal cultivation in abandoned chambers provides some communities with renewable food sources, but these operations require specific environmental conditions and technical knowledge that limit their widespread adoption. Protein extraction from the various creatures that inhabit the underhive ecosystem offers another food source, but hunting these animals requires weapons and skills that many desperate individuals lack. The most reliable food sources often involve trade relationships with upper hive levels or gang organizations that can provide processed nutrients in exchange for labor or materials. Shelter construction in the underhive environment requires specialized knowledge and materials to create habitations that can protect against the numerous environmental hazards while providing adequate space for community activities. The toxic atmosphere makes proper ventilation essential, but the installation of atmospheric processing equipment requires technical expertise and expensive components that are often beyond the reach of desperate communities. Structural integrity becomes a critical concern in areas where industrial accidents or natural deterioration have weakened building foundations, making construction projects dangerous undertakings that can result in catastrophic collapses if not properly executed. The medical challenges faced by underhive populations include treatment of radiation sickness, chemical poisoning, and the various diseases that thrive in the contaminated environment. Medical supplies are extremely scarce and expensive, forcing communities to develop improvised treatments using locally available materials and traditional remedies passed down through generations of underhive inhabitants. The prevalence of genetic mutations creates additional medical complications, as standard imperial medical procedures may not be effective for treating individuals whose physiology has been altered by exposure to exotic contaminants. The makeshift armories that populate Necromunda's underhive bear witness to humanity's endless capacity for adaptation and violence, where scavenged components and salvaged materials are transformed into functional weapons through necessity, ingenuity, and sheer desperation. These improvised arsenals reflect the harsh realities of underhive existence, where access to factory-manufactured equipment remains limited to the most successful gang leaders and their elite fighters. The majority of underhive combatants must rely on weapons that have been assembled from whatever materials they can acquire through trade, theft, or salvage operations, creating a diverse ecosystem of jury-rigged firearms and modified industrial tools that serve as instruments of survival in the brutal territorial conflicts that define daily life in the depths. Autogun construction in the underhive typically involves combining receivers salvaged from abandoned Imperial Guard equipment, with barrels cut from industrial piping and stocks carved from structural materials or scavenged furniture. These weapons may lack the precision and reliability of factory-manufactured firearms, but experienced underhive gunsmiths have developed techniques for improving their performance through careful modification and maintenance. Trigger mechanisms are often simplified to reduce the likelihood of malfunction, while ammunition feeds are modified to accept whatever cartridges are available through black market channels or local manufacturing operations. The resulting weapons may appear crude and ungainly, but they can deliver devastating firepower when properly maintained and operated by fighters who understand their limitations and capabilities. Stubber weapons represent some of the most common firearms found throughout the underhive, their simple mechanisms making them relatively easy to manufacture and maintain using basic workshop facilities. These weapons fire solid projectiles that can be produced from readily available materials, including lead extracted from old plumbing systems, steel salvaged from industrial equipment, and brass cases recovered from spent ammunition. Underhive gunsmiths often modify stubber barrels to improve their accuracy and range, while ammunition specialists develop specialized rounds that incorporate explosive charges, armor-piercing cores, or chemical payloads designed to incapacitate specific types of targets. The most skilled craftsmen can produce stubber weapons that rival the performance of factory-manufactured equipment, though such weapons command premium prices and are typically reserved for gang leaders and veteran fighters. Shotgun construction in the underhive benefits from the simplicity of the basic mechanism and the availability of suitable materials for creating effective ammunition. Barrels can be fashioned from heavy-gauge piping or salvaged from industrial equipment, while shells can be loaded with whatever projectiles are available, including scrap metal fragments, industrial ball bearings, or specialized loads designed for specific combat situations. Underhive shotgun ammunition often incorporates materials that would be considered unconventional by Imperial Guard standards, including glass shards from broken windows, ceramic fragments from damaged equipment, and even processed organic materials that can cause severe infections in wounded targets. The devastating close-range effectiveness of these weapons makes them particularly popular among gang fighters who specialize in tunnel fighting and close-quarters combat. Melee weapon construction in the underhive draws upon the vast quantities of industrial materials and tools that litter the abandoned manufacturing districts, with craftsmen modifying everything from construction equipment to kitchen implements for combat use. Chain weapons represent the pinnacle of underhive melee technology, their motorized cutting teeth capable of inflicting devastating wounds that can sever limbs or penetrate heavy armor with sustained contact. The construction of functional chain weapons requires access to motor components, cutting chains, and fuel systems that can be challenging to acquire and maintain, making these weapons valuable trade commodities that often change hands multiple times during their operational lifespans. Skilled mechanics can modify chain weapon motors to increase their cutting speed or reduce their noise signature, creating specialized variants that serve specific tactical roles within gang arsenals. Power weapons remain extremely rare in the underhive due to the complex technology and exotic materials required for their construction, but occasionally these devastating armaments surface through archaeotech discoveries or black market transactions with corrupt Imperial officials. The power fields generated by these weapons can disrupt molecular bonds in target materials, allowing them to slice through armor and flesh with minimal resistance while cauterizing wounds to prevent bleeding. The maintenance requirements for power weapons exceed the capabilities of most underhive workshops, as their energy cells and field generators require specialized knowledge and replacement components that are often impossible to obtain through legitimate channels. Gang leaders who possess functional power weapons often view them as symbols of status and authority, displaying these rare armaments during negotiations and ceremonial events to demonstrate their power and resources. Explosive devices in the underhive range from crude pipe bombs assembled from scavenged materials to sophisticated demolition charges that incorporate military-grade components acquired through black market channels. The most common explosives utilize chemical compounds that can be extracted from industrial processes or synthesized using readily available materials, including fertilizers, cleaning solvents, and fuel additives that can be combined to create effective blast charges. Underhive bomb makers develop specialized techniques for creating shaped charges that can breach fortified positions, fragmentation devices that maximize casualty rates in confined spaces, and incendiary weapons that can clear entire chambers of enemy fighters. The knowledge required for safe explosive construction is closely guarded by experienced practitioners, as improper handling of volatile materials has resulted in numerous accidents that have claimed the lives of inexperienced bomb makers and their associates. Armor construction in the underhive reflects the same improvised approach that characterizes weapon manufacturing, with protection systems assembled from whatever materials can provide adequate defense against the weapons commonly encountered in gang warfare. Flak armor components salvaged from Imperial Guard equipment form the foundation for many protection systems, with additional layers added using industrial materials such as metal plating, ceramic tiles, and reinforced fabrics. The most effective underhive armor incorporates multiple protection layers that can defeat different types of attacks, including ballistic panels that stop projectile weapons, energy-dispersing materials that reduce the effectiveness of Law's weapons, and chemical-resistant coatings that protect against toxic environments and biological weapons. Environmental suits represent essential protective equipment for fighters who must operate in the most contaminated areas of the underhive, where atmospheric toxins and radiation levels can kill unprotected individuals within minutes of exposure. These suits typically combine respirator systems with full body coverage that prevents skin contact with dangerous substances, along with filtration equipment that can process contaminated air into breathable atmospheres. The construction of effective environmental suits requires access to specialized materials and components that are often difficult to acquire, including filter media that can remove specific contaminants, sealing systems that prevent atmospheric infiltration, and life support equipment that can sustain wearers during extended operations in hostile environments. The legendary status of archaeotech within underhive society stems from its potential to completely transform the balance of power between competing gangs, as these ancient artifacts often incorporate technologies that far exceed the capabilities of standard Imperial equipment. Standard template construct fragments represent the most valuable archaeotech discoveries, as these devices contain manufacturing specifications for equipment that was produced during humanity's technological golden age before the onset of the Age of Strife. The recovery of functional STC components can provide gangs with access to weapons, armor, and equipment that surpass anything available through conventional channels, creating decisive advantages that can determine the outcome of territorial conflicts and establish new hierarchies within the underhive power structure. Weapon archaeotech discoveries have included firearms that incorporate targeting systems capable of automatically adjusting for range and environmental conditions, energy weapons that generate more powerful and efficient beams than standard Imperial Law's weapons, and projectile weapons that fire self-guiding ammunition capable of pursuing targets around corners and through complex terrain. These weapons often feature construction techniques and materials that cannot be replicated using current Imperial technology, making them irreplaceable artifacts that command enormous values in black market transactions. The most sophisticated archaeotech weapons may incorporate artificial intelligence systems that can analyze combat situations and provide tactical recommendations to their users, though such devices are often viewed with suspicion due to Imperial prohibitions against artificial intelligence research. Armor archaeotech includes protection systems that can generate energy shields capable of deflecting or absorbing incoming attacks, environmental suits that provide complete protection against even the most extreme hazardous conditions, and powered armor systems that enhance the wearer's strength and mobility while providing superior protection. These artifacts often feature self-repair capabilities that allow them to maintain their effectiveness despite damage and wear, along with power systems that can operate for extended periods without requiring external energy sources. The most advanced armor archaeotech may incorporate medical systems that can treat injuries and administer stimulants to maintain the wearer's combat effectiveness during prolonged engagements. Industrial archaeotech discoveries can revolutionize gang manufacturing capabilities by providing access to production techniques and equipment that far exceed the efficiency and quality of conventional underhive workshops. These artifacts may include automated manufacturing systems that can produce weapons and equipment from raw materials with minimal human intervention, materials processing equipment that can refine exotic compounds and alloys, and quality control systems that ensure consistent performance from manufactured products. The most valuable industrial archaeotech can enable gangs to establish manufacturing operations that rival or exceed the capabilities of legitimate Imperial factories, creating opportunities for economic expansion and technological advancement that can reshape the entire underhive economy. Medical archaeotech represents some of the most sought-after discoveries in the underhive, where access to advanced medical treatment can mean the difference between life and death for injured fighters and civilian populations. These devices may include diagnostic equipment that can identify and treat conditions that would be beyond the capabilities of conventional Imperial medical technology, surgical systems that can perform complex operations with minimal risk of complications, and pharmaceutical synthesizers that can produce advanced medications from readily available materials. The most sophisticated medical archaeotech may incorporate genetic repair systems that can reverse mutation damage and restore normal human physiology, though such capabilities are often viewed with suspicion by Imperial authorities who consider genetic manipulation to be potentially heretical. House Van Saar's technological supremacy within Necromunda's industrial hierarchy derives from their exclusive access to substantial archaeotech repositories and their sophisticated understanding of Dark Age manufacturing techniques that allow them to produce equipment far superior to standard Imperial specifications. Their primary manufacturing facilities incorporate production lines that utilize SDC fragments and ancient technical specifications to create weapons and equipment that command premium prices throughout the sector. These facilities operate under strict security protocols that prevent unauthorized access to their most sensitive manufacturing processes, while their technical specialists undergo extensive training programs that combine theoretical knowledge with practical experience in handling archaeotech components. The weapons produced by House Van Saar incorporate advanced targeting systems that can lock onto enemies through smoke, debris, and electronic countermeasures, providing their fighters with significant advantages in the chaotic combat conditions common throughout the underhive. Their Law's weapons feature enhanced power cells that provide sustained high-energy output without the frequent recharging required by standard Imperial equipment, while their projectile weapons fire specialized ammunition that can adapt its penetration characteristics based on target composition and range. The most advanced Van Saar weapons incorporate predictive targeting algorithms that can calculate optimal firing solutions for moving targets, along with threat assessment systems that can prioritize targets based on their combat effectiveness and tactical importance. Van Saar armor systems represent the pinnacle of personal protection technology available on Necromunda, featuring energy shields that can deflect incoming projectiles and energy weapons, while maintaining the wearer's mobility and combat effectiveness. These protection systems incorporate advanced materials that provide superior ballistic resistance while remaining lightweight enough to allow extended combat operations without fatigue. Environmental protection features include atmospheric processors that can filter toxic gases and particulates, temperature regulation systems that maintain optimal operating conditions regardless of external conditions, and medical monitoring equipment that can track the wearer's vital signs and administer emergency treatment when necessary. The energy weapons technology controlled by House Van Saar includes plasma weapons that generate more stable and controllable energy discharges than standard Imperial equipment, reducing the risk of catastrophic overheating while increasing their damage potential against heavily armored targets. Their Law's weapon technology incorporates focusing crystals and beam coherent systems that maintain weapon effectiveness at extended ranges, while their power systems can sustain high energy output for prolonged periods without degrading weapon performance. The most advanced Van Saar energy weapons feature variable output settings that allow operators to adjust their power levels based on tactical requirements, conserving energy when engaging lightly armored targets while maximizing damage potential against heavily protected enemies. The manufacturing secrets guarded by House Van Saar include production techniques for creating the exotic materials and components that enable their technological advantages, along with the specialized knowledge required for maintaining and repairing archaeotech equipment. Their workshops employ master craftsmen who have spent decades learning the intricacies of ancient manufacturing processes, combining traditional metalworking skills with sophisticated understanding of exotic physics and materials science. These specialists can modify standard Imperial equipment to incorporate Van Saar technological improvements, creating hybrid systems that bridge the gap between conventional Imperial technology and the advanced capabilities provided by their archaeotech resources. The black market networks that operate throughout Necromunda's underhive facilitate the distribution of exotic weapons, combat drugs, and cybernetic enhancements that would be impossible to obtain through legitimate channels. These criminal enterprises maintain sophisticated distribution systems that can move contraband goods between different levels of the hive structure while avoiding detection by law enforcement agencies and corporate security forces. The most successful black market operations involve multiple criminal organizations working in coordination to handle different aspects of smuggling operations, including procurement, transportation, storage, and retail distribution to end users throughout the underhive community. Exotic weapon trafficking represents one of the most lucrative aspects of underhive black market operations, as these rare and powerful armaments command premium prices from gang leaders and wealthy criminals who seek decisive advantages over their rivals. These weapons may include off-world designs that incorporate alien technology, experimental Imperial prototypes that were never approved for mass production, or archaeotech discoveries that have been modified for practical combat use. The procurement of exotic weapons often involves elaborate criminal conspiracies that may include corrupt Imperial officials, rogue trader crews, and criminal organizations operating across multiple star systems. Combat drug distribution networks supply the various chemical enhancement substances that are essential for maintaining competitive advantages in underhive gang warfare. These operations typically involve sophisticated manufacturing facilities that can produce stimulants, pain suppressors, and performance enhancers using chemical precursors obtained through theft, corruption, or legitimate business transactions. The most valuable combat drugs include compounds that can temporarily enhance physical strength and reflexes, substances that can suppress fear and pain responses during combat, and specialized medications that can counteract specific types of weapons or environmental hazards. The distribution of these substances requires careful quality control and security measures, as contaminated or adulterated drugs can cause severe injuries or death among users. Cybernetic enhancement trafficking involves the illegal modification of human subjects with mechanical implants and electronic systems that can provide significant advantages in combat situations and specialized activities. These operations require access to sophisticated medical facilities and technical expertise that can safely integrate artificial components with human physiology, along with the specialized knowledge required for programming and maintaining complex cybernetic systems. The most common enhancements include optical implants that can provide enhanced vision capabilities, neural interfaces that can improve reaction times and coordination, and mechanical limb replacements that offer superior strength and durability compared to natural human anatomy. The installation of cybernetic enhancements in underhive medical facilities involves significant risks due to the lack of proper sterile conditions and the limited availability of qualified medical personnel who understand the complexities of cybernetic integration. Many enhancement procedures are performed by self-taught technicians who have acquired their knowledge through trial and error, leading to high failure rates and frequent complications that can result in infection, rejection, or system malfunctions. The most successful cybernetic enhancement operations involve medical specialists who have received formal training in imperial medical facilities before establishing their own practices in the underhive, though such individuals often charge premium rates for their services. The Adeptus Arbites maintains a deliberately limited presence on Necromunda, focusing their enforcement efforts exclusively on violations of imperial law that threaten the planet's strategic value to the broader Imperium, rather than attempting to police the countless local crimes and territorial disputes that characterize daily life in the Hive cities. Their fortress precinct in Hive Primus occupies a massive armored complex in the upper spire levels, its reinforced walls and defensive positions designed to withstand siege warfare, while providing secure facilities for processing high-value prisoners and coordinating sector-wide law enforcement operations. The Arbites garrison consists of approximately 3,000 officers and support personnel, a force that would be woefully inadequate for policing a planetary population exceeding 100 billion souls if their mandate extended beyond the most serious imperial crimes. The Arbites command structure on Necromunda operates under Marshal Hellas Vex, a veteran officer whose 40-year career has included service on a dozen different worlds throughout the Segmentum Solar. Marshal Vex maintains direct communication links with sector command authorities and possesses the authority to requisition additional forces from neighboring systems when major imperial crimes require investigation. His officers focus their attention on offenses that fall under imperial jurisdiction, including heresy, sedition, large-scale smuggling operations that violate inter-system trade regulations, and crimes committed by individuals who possess imperial citizenship or official positions within the planetary government. The Marshal's interpretation of Arbites' jurisdiction emphasizes maintaining the stability of imperial institutions rather than enforcing general public order, a practical approach that acknowledges the impossibility of extending effective law enforcement throughout Necromunda's vast underhive territories. Arbites' patrol operations in the upper hive levels follow established routes that connect government facilities, major industrial complexes, and the residential districts occupied by imperial officials and their families. These patrols utilize armored vehicles equipped with advanced communication systems and heavy weapons capable of suppressing civil disturbances or responding to terrorist attacks. The officers wear distinctive carapace armor that incorporates riot control equipment, surveillance systems, and medical monitoring devices that can summon emergency support when patrol members are injured or incapacitated. Their weapons include shock mauls for crowd control, combat shotguns loaded with various specialized ammunition types, and suppression shields that can deflect projectiles while providing cover for advancing officers. The investigation protocols employed by the Embodies emphasize rapid response to serious crimes and the application of overwhelming force to ensure successful resolution of incidents that threaten Imperial authority. Their detective specialists possess advanced training in forensic analysis, interrogation techniques, and surveillance methods that allow them to identify and apprehend criminals who operate within the complex political and economic networks that characterize upper hive society. These investigations often involve coordination with other Imperial agencies, including the Inquisition, Adeptus Mechanicus security forces, and military intelligence units that monitor potential threats to Imperial security throughout the sector. The Embodies detention facilities in Hive Primus include maximum security cells designed to hold dangerous criminals and political prisoners who require isolation from the general population. These facilities incorporate advanced security systems that can monitor prisoner activities continuously while preventing communication with outside contacts who might attempt to organize rescue operations or coordinate criminal activities. The interrogation chambers utilize a combination of psychological pressure and chemical enhancement to extract information from uncooperative subjects, though Embodies protocols require authorization from senior officers before employing the most extreme techniques that might cause permanent physical or mental damage. The relationship between the Embodies and the planetary government reflects the complex balance of authority that characterizes Imperial administration, as both organizations possess overlapping jurisdictions that can create conflicts over specific cases and enforcement priorities. Lord Helmor maintains cordial relations with Marshal Vex through regular meetings and information sharing agreements that help coordinate their respective activities while avoiding jurisdictional disputes that might interfere with effective law enforcement. The Embodies recognize the practical necessity of working with local authorities to maintain order in the upper hive levels, while the planetary government acknowledges that Imperial law supersedes local regulations when conflicts arise between different legal frameworks. The Palanite Enforcers serve as Necromunda's primary law enforcement organization, their mandate extending throughout the hive cities under the direct authority of the planetary government and the noble houses that control the planet's political and economic systems. These forces operate under Captain General Croger, a former Imperial Guard officer whose appointment reflects the military approach that characterizes enforcer operations throughout the hive structure. The enforcers maintain precinct stations in every major district of the upper and middle hive levels, with their patrol routes extending into the industrial zones, where they focus on protecting corporate assets and maintaining the security of transportation networks that move goods and personnel between different facilities. Enforcer recruitment draws primarily from the middle hive population, selecting candidates who demonstrate loyalty to the established order while possessing the physical capabilities and psychological profile necessary for effective law enforcement in Necromunda's challenging urban environment. Training programs emphasize weapons proficiency, crowd control techniques, and the legal knowledge required for investigating crimes that fall under planetary jurisdiction. New recruits undergo 6 months of intensive preparation that includes combat training, legal education, and practical experience working alongside veteran officers in patrol and investigation duties. The most promising graduates receive additional specialized training in areas such as riot control, criminal investigation, and counter-terrorism operations. The equipment issued to Palanite enforcers reflects their role as paramilitary police forces operating in an environment where criminal organizations possess military-grade weapons and equipment. Standard patrol gear includes carapace armor that provides protection against small arms fire and fragmentation weapons, along with riot shields that can deflect projectiles while allowing officers to advance against armed opposition. Their weapons typically include combat shotguns with various ammunition types for different tactical situations, auto pistols for close quarters combat, and shock mauls that can incapacitate suspects without causing permanent injury. Specialized units receive additional equipment such as heavy weapons for suppressing gang warfare, surveillance gear for conducting covert operations, and protective equipment for operating in contaminated environments. Enforcer patrol tactics emphasize maintaining visible security presence in areas where their authority is recognized, while avoiding confrontations with organized criminal groups that possess superior firepower or territorial advantages. Their operations focus on protecting legitimate businesses, investigating crimes that affect upper and middle hive residents, and responding to incidents that threaten public order or economic stability. Patrol units typically consist of 4 to 6 officers equipped with armored vehicles that provide mobility and communication support while offering protection against ambush attacks. These patrols follow predetermined routes that maximize their visibility in commercial districts while avoiding areas where their presence might provoke violent responses from territorial gangs. The investigative capabilities of the Palanite enforcers include forensic laboratories that can analyze physical evidence, surveillance networks that monitor communications and transportation systems, and intelligence units that gather information about criminal organizations operating within their jurisdiction. Their detective specialists receive training in interrogation techniques, evidence analysis, and criminal psychology that enables them to solve complex cases involving fraud, theft, and other crimes that require sophisticated investigative methods. The most serious investigations often involve coordination with corporate security forces and noble house guards who possess specialized knowledge about specific criminal activities or access to information that might not be available through official channels. The corruption that permeates enforcer operations reflects the practical realities of law enforcement in a society where legitimate authority competes with criminal organizations that possess substantial resources and political influence. Many enforcer officers supplement their official salaries through arrangements with gang leaders who pay for advance warning of planned raids, selective enforcement that targets their rivals while ignoring their own activities, and protection services that ensure their operations can continue without official interference. These corrupt relationships create complex webs of obligation and mutual dependence that can compromise the effectiveness of law enforcement while providing criminal organizations with valuable intelligence about official activities. The protection racket arrangements between enforcers and criminal organizations typically involve regular payments in exchange for specific services that benefit both parties while maintaining the appearance of legitimate law enforcement. Gang leaders may pay enforcer units to focus their patrol activities on rival territories, conduct raids against competing criminal organizations, or provide advance warning when major operations are planned that might affect gang activities. These arrangements are usually negotiated through intermediaries who can maintain plausible deniability for both parties while ensuring that agreements are honored and payments are made according to established schedules. Selective enforcement represents one of the most common forms of corruption within the enforcer organization, as officers choose which crimes to investigate and which criminal activities to ignore based on their relationships with different criminal organizations. This practice allows gangs that maintain good relationships with corrupt officers to operate with relative impunity, while their rivals face constant harassment and interference from law enforcement. The most sophisticated selective enforcement operations involve careful coordination between multiple enforcer units to ensure that their activities appear legitimate while actually serving the interests of their criminal partners. The intelligence sharing that occurs between corrupt enforcers and criminal organizations provides gangs with valuable information about planned operations, surveillance activities, and the movements of rival groups that might threaten their territories or business interests. This information can include details about upcoming raids, the locations of surveillance equipment, and the identities of informants who provide information to law enforcement agencies. The most valuable intelligence involves advance warning of major operations that might disrupt criminal activities, allowing gang leaders to relocate their operations or prepare defensive measures that can minimize the impact of official interference. The unofficial system of gang justice that governs the underhive operates according to unwritten codes that emphasize strength, reputation, and the ability to enforce territorial claims through violence rather than appeals to external authority. This system has evolved over generations of gang warfare to create informal mechanisms for resolving disputes, establishing territorial boundaries, and maintaining social order in areas where official law enforcement lacks the resources or political will to establish effective control. Gang leaders serve as judges and enforcers within their territories, making decisions about criminal activities, territorial disputes, and violations of gang codes that affect their followers and the civilian populations under their protection. The territorial justice system, administered by gang organizations, typically involves public trials where accused individuals can present their cases before gang leaders, who possess the authority to impose punishments ranging from fines and community service to exile or execution. These proceedings follow established customs that vary between different gang cultures, but generally emphasize the importance of maintaining order within gang territories, while demonstrating the leader's authority to their followers and rivals. The most serious cases involve violations of gang codes that threaten the organization's reputation or effectiveness, such as betrayal of gang secrets, cowardice during combat operations, or unauthorized violence against protected individuals. Reputation serves as the fundamental currency within the underhive justice system, as gang leaders and individual fighters must constantly demonstrate their strength and reliability to maintain their positions within the complex social hierarchies that govern criminal organizations. A gang's reputation for effective justice and fair dealing can attract new recruits, encourage cooperation from civilian populations, and deter attacks from rival organizations that recognize their competence and determination. Conversely, gangs that develop reputations for weakness or inconsistency may find their territories under constant attack, while their members defect to more successful organizations that offer better protection and opportunities for advancement. The enforcement mechanisms available to gang leaders include public punishment ceremonies that demonstrate their authority while deterring future violations of gang codes, economic sanctions that can devastate individuals or businesses that depend on gang protection, and violent retribution that can eliminate threats to gang authority while sending clear messages to potential challengers. These mechanisms operate within informal networks of communication that ensure information about gang justice decisions spreads quickly throughout the underhive community, creating awareness of the consequences that await those who violate established codes or challenge gang authority. The dispute resolution procedures employed by gang organizations often involve negotiations between different groups that seek to avoid costly conflicts while maintaining their territorial integrity and economic interests. These negotiations may include compensation payments for damages caused by territorial violations, prisoner exchanges that resolve conflicts over captured gang members, and agreements that establish new territorial boundaries or modify existing arrangements based on changing circumstances. The most complex disputes require mediation by neutral parties who possess sufficient reputation and authority to ensure that agreements are honored by all participants. The complex relationship between official law enforcement and gang activities creates a three-tiered system of authority that operates according to different rules and priorities, depending on the specific location and circumstances involved. In the upper hive levels, imperial and planetary law enforcement agencies maintain effective control over most criminal activities, while tolerating minor violations that do not threaten their primary objectives. The middle hive levels represent contested territory where official authority competes with gang influence, creating opportunities for corruption and selective enforcement that benefit both law enforcement officers and criminal organizations. The underhive operates almost entirely under gang control, with official law enforcement making only occasional forays into these territories to address specific threats or conduct major operations that require substantial resources and planning. The coordination between different levels of authority often involves informal agreements that allow each organization to pursue its objectives without unnecessary conflict while maintaining the appearance of legitimate governance. Gang leaders may provide information about serious crimes or terrorist activities that threaten imperial interests in exchange for reduced interference in their routine criminal operations. Law enforcement agencies may focus their attention on specific criminal organizations while ignoring others that maintain cooperative relationships or provide valuable intelligence about their rivals. These arrangements create stable but unofficial power-sharing agreements that can persist for years or decades until changing circumstances force renegotiation or violent confrontation. The strategic importance of Necromunda within the vast machinery of imperial logistics cannot be overstated, as this single hive world produces approximately 12% of all small arms ammunition consumed by Imperial Guard regiments throughout the segmentum solar. The planet's massive munitions factories operate continuously across 3 shifts, their production lines churning out millions of LAW's weapon power cells, autogun cartridges, and specialized ordnance that supplies military forces across dozens of star systems. The Adeptus Munitorum maintains permanent liaison offices in Hive Primus, where senior logistics officers coordinate delivery schedules that ensure critical supplies reach frontline units before their existing stockpiles are exhausted. These operations involve a complex network of cargo haulers, escort vessels, and orbital transfer stations that process over 40,000 tons of military equipment daily. The weapons manufactured on Necromunda have earned recognition throughout Imperial military circles for their reliability and effectiveness under combat conditions. Necromunda pattern lasguns incorporate design improvements developed through centuries of battlefield feedback, featuring enhanced heat dissipation systems that prevent overheating during sustained fire and reinforced components that can withstand the harsh conditions encountered on contested worlds. The planet's armorsmiths produce flak armor that provides superior protection while remaining lightweight enough for extended combat operations, using advanced composite materials that can deflect shrapnel and absorb kinetic energy more effectively than standard Imperial designs. Artillery shells manufactured in the planet's heavy ordnance facilities incorporate precision, engineered fusing mechanisms that ensure reliable detonation under various environmental conditions, making them particularly valuable for siege warfare and planetary assault operations. Space Marine chapters throughout the sector maintain procurement contracts with Necromunda's specialized manufacturing houses, acquiring equipment that meets their exacting standards for quality and performance. The Crimson Fists chapter sources their bolt ammunition from House Van Saar's precision manufacturing facilities, where ancient production techniques create rounds that exceed standard Imperial specifications for accuracy and penetration. The Imperial Fists maintain a permanent liaison office in Hive Secundus, where their tech marines oversee the production of siege equipment and fortification materials used in their defensive operations across multiple star systems. These relationships involve extensive quality control procedures and security protocols that ensure sensitive military technology remains protected while meeting the chapter's operational requirements. The recruitment of Necromunda's population into Imperial Guard regiments represents one of the planet's most significant contributions to the broader Imperial war effort, with approximately 2 million individuals entering military service annually through voluntary enlistment and conscription programs. The harsh conditions that characterize life in the Hive cities create populations that are naturally adapted to the violence and deprivation that define military service, making Necromundan recruits particularly valuable for operations in hostile environments. Their experience with gang warfare and territorial conflicts provides them with combat instincts and tactical awareness that often surpass those of recruits from more peaceful worlds, while their familiarity with advanced weapons and industrial equipment makes them effective operators of military hardware. The 114th Necromundan Spiders Regiment has distinguished itself in campaigns across the Eastern Fringe, where their expertise in urban warfare and tunnel fighting proved decisive during the siege of Hive Tertius on Mordian Prime. The regiment's soldiers demonstrated exceptional proficiency in close-quarters combat and demolition operations, using techniques developed during their service in Necromunda's underhive to clear fortified positions and establish footholds in enemy territory. Their knowledge of industrial equipment and manufacturing processes enabled them to sabotage enemy production facilities while maintaining captured infrastructure for Imperial use, contributing significantly to the campaign's strategic objectives. The 67th Necromundan Heavy Infantry specializes in siege warfare and defensive operations, drawing upon the planet's experience with hive city construction and fortification techniques. Their engineers possess intimate knowledge of structural engineering principles that allow them to identify weak points in enemy fortifications while designing defensive positions that can withstand sustained bombardment. The regiment's heavy weapons specialists operate artillery pieces and anti-armor systems with exceptional skill, their training in industrial machinery providing them with the technical expertise necessary for maintaining complex equipment under combat conditions. Their service record includes successful defensive actions on Cadia Prime and Armageddon, where their ability to coordinate fire support and establish interlocking fields of fire proved crucial for repelling enemy assaults. Necromunda's position within the Segmentum Solar Defense Network makes it a critical component of the Imperium's strategic response capabilities, as its orbital facilities and transportation infrastructure can support rapid deployment of military forces to threatened systems throughout the sector. The planet's shipyards produce escort vessels and transport ships that serve with Imperial Navy fleets, while its orbital defense platforms provide protection for the shipping lanes that connect Terra to the outer reaches of Imperial space. The system's asteroid mining operations extract materials essential for spacecraft construction and maintenance, ensuring that naval forces operating in the region have access to the resources necessary for extended campaigns. The planetary defense forces of Necromunda maintain readiness levels that reflect the world's strategic importance and its vulnerability to external threats. The Necromundan 1st Planetary Defense Regiment operates advanced anti-orbital weaponry capable of engaging enemy spacecraft at extreme ranges, while specialized air defense units deploy surface-to-air missile systems that can intercept atmospheric attack craft and orbital drop pods. These forces conduct regular training exercises with visiting Imperial Guard units and Space Marine chapters, maintaining proficiency levels that ensure effective coordination during major military operations. Their equipment includes void shields and hardened communication systems that can maintain operational effectiveness even under sustained bombardment from orbital platforms. The threat of chaos infiltration represents one of the most serious security challenges facing Necromunda's defense establishment, as the planet's massive population and complex social structures provide numerous opportunities for heretical cults to establish themselves and spread their corrupting influence. The Ordo Hereticus maintains a permanent presence on the planet through Inquisitor Helena Valeria, whose agents monitor the activities of suspected cult organizations while investigating reports of heretical behavior among the Hive city populations. These operations require careful coordination with local authorities to avoid disrupting the industrial production that makes Necromunda strategically valuable, while ensuring that chaos influence does not compromise the planet's loyalty to the Imperium. Cult activities in the underhive pose particular challenges for Imperial security forces, as the chaotic environment and limited official presence create ideal conditions for heretical organizations to recruit followers and establish operational bases. The cult of the Bleeding Gear has infiltrated several major manufacturing facilities, where cultists sabotage production equipment and attempt to corrupt machine spirits through blasphemous rituals. Their activities have resulted in several industrial accidents that killed hundreds of workers while disrupting critical production schedules. Inquisitorial agents work closely with Adeptus Mechanicus security forces to identify and eliminate cult cells before they can cause significant damage to the planet's industrial capacity. The presence of alien infiltrators adds another layer of complexity to Necromunda's security challenges, as various xenospecies view the planet's industrial capacity and strategic location as valuable targets for espionage and sabotage operations. Genestealer cults have established small enclaves in the deepest levels of the underhive, where they slowly spread their influence through the desperate populations that inhabit these forgotten territories. Their hybrid offspring can pass for heavily mutated humans in environments where genetic abnormalities are common, allowing them to infiltrate legitimate organizations and gather intelligence about Imperial military capabilities and defensive preparations. Dark Eldar raiding parties occasionally penetrate Necromunda's outer defenses to conduct slave raids in the underhive territories, where their victims are unlikely to be missed by Imperial authorities. These operations target specific populations that possess valuable skills or genetic characteristics, including tech savants who understand archaeotech operation and gang fighters, whose combat experience makes them valuable additions to gladiatorial arenas. The raiders utilize their superior speed and stealth capabilities to avoid detection by planetary defense forces while extracting their captives through hidden routes that exploit weaknesses in the planet's defensive network. The delicate balance between maintaining industrial productivity and managing social unrest requires constant attention from planetary authorities, who must ensure that Necromunda's strategic contributions to the Imperium continue despite the numerous challenges that threaten to destabilize the planet's complex social and economic systems. The massive population disparities between the wealthy spire nobles and the impoverished underhive communities create tensions that could erupt into planet-wide rebellion if not carefully managed through a combination of selective enforcement, economic incentives, and strategic application of force when necessary. The food distribution crisis that periodically affects the lower hive levels represents one of the most serious threats to planetary stability, as disruptions in the supply chains that provide protein-rich corpse starch to underhive populations can trigger massive riots that spread throughout entire hive cities. The planetary government maintains strategic food reserves and emergency distribution networks that can respond to shortages, but these systems require careful coordination with the major houses that control agricultural production and processing facilities. The threat of starvation-driven uprisings forces authorities to balance the economic interests of the noble houses against the need to maintain minimum subsistence levels for the billions of workers whose labor drives the planet's industrial output. Industrial accidents that release toxic chemicals or cause structural collapses can create cascading effects that disrupt production schedules while generating civil unrest among affected populations. The explosion at chemical processing facility Sigma 7 in Hive Tertius killed over 3,000 workers and contaminated several residential districts with mutagenic compounds, triggering protests and work stoppages that reduced planetary ammunition production by 15% for 6 months. The incident required extensive resources for cleanup and compensation, while highlighting the risks inherent in maintaining industrial operations that prioritize production quotas over safety protocols. The gang warfare that rages throughout the underhive occasionally spills over into the middle hive levels, where it can disrupt transportation networks and threaten the security of legitimate businesses that support the planet's industrial operations. Major conflicts between House Orlok and House Goliath affiliates have resulted in damage to mining equipment and chemical processing facilities, forcing authorities to deploy enforcer units and sometimes Imperial Guard reserves to restore order. These interventions require careful planning to avoid escalating local conflicts into broader uprisings that could threaten the stability of entire hive cities. The recruitment demands of the Imperial Guard create additional pressures on Necromunda's social stability, as the constant drain of young adults from the workforce affects both industrial productivity and family structures throughout the hive cities. While military service provides opportunities for advancement and escape from the harsh conditions of hive life, it also removes skilled workers from critical industries and disrupts the social networks that help maintain order in underhive communities. The planetary government must balance imperial recruitment quotas against the need to maintain sufficient workforce levels for continued industrial production. The corruption that permeates various levels of Necromunda's government and security forces creates vulnerabilities that could be exploited by external enemies or internal dissidents seeking to undermine imperial authority. The extensive black market networks that operate throughout the planet provide channels for smuggling weapons and contraband that could support rebellion or terrorist activities, while corrupt officials might provide sensitive information to hostile forces in exchange for personal gain. The Inquisition maintains constant surveillance of key government positions and regularly conducts loyalty assessments to identify potential security risks before they can compromise planetary defenses. Despite these challenges, Necromunda continues to fulfill its crucial role within the Imperium's vast military-industrial complex, its foundries and manufactorums working tirelessly to supply the weapons and equipment that defend humanity against the countless threats that assail the galaxy. The planet stands as a testament to the Imperium's ability to harness human ingenuity and determination in service of survival, transforming a toxic wasteland into one of the most productive manufacturing centers in known space. The billions of souls who toil in its factories and fight in its underhive territories represent the unbreakable spirit of humanity that has endured for 10,000 years of constant warfare. The future of Necromunda remains inextricably linked to the broader fate of the Imperium, as the planet's strategic importance ensures that it will continue to attract both protection and threats from the various forces that shape the galaxy's destiny. Its weapons will arm the soldiers who defend distant worlds against alien invasion, while its people will continue to demonstrate the resilience and adaptability that have made humanity the dominant species in the galaxy. In the grim darkness of the far future, Necromunda endures as a vital bastion of imperial power, its smoking spires reaching toward the stars, while its foundations burrow deep into the planet's toxic heart, forever bound to the eternal struggle that defines existence in the 41st millennium.